Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the NXTGEN Racing European GT3 Series 2021. It's round number 6. We're almost at the end. We've got 3 more races to go, including tonight, and we have got a very challenging race on the schedule tonight for all of our drivers. In terms of our schedule for tonight, British Summertime or UTC+1, the times I'm about to read out to you, will be getting underway with the driver's briefing at 7:25 this evening, so in just under 15 minutes time. Qualifying will then commence at 7:30. It'll be a 15-minute qualifying session to determine who will be on pole position for today's race, and then we'll get underway with a 75-minute feature race at 7:45, 19:45, and following that, we'll be bringing you the post-race podium interviews with our top 3 finishers. In the commentary box, as always, you have myself, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Brit in a Spit, depending on what media you follow me on, and do keep in mind that this series is being broadcasted on 3 different media platforms. On the NXTGEN Racing official YouTube channel, on the NXTGEN Racing official Facebook page, and also on my own personal Twitch channel, that is Twitch TX141. But going away from the media, and let's talk a little bit about our partners. Now, we are running this series in collaboration with 2 wonderful partners without whom this would not be possible. And firstly, let's introduce the SimGrid. Now, for those who are wondering, who are the SimGrid? The SimGrid are a place for amateur and professional sim racers to compete against fellow drivers in leagues and endurance events for Assetto Corsa Competizione. Indeed, that is the platform that we're bringing this series on, Assetto Corsa Competizione on the PC, and the SimGrid have been integral in helping us organise this and run this, and indeed they're part of the stewarding team and members of the SimGrid. Be sure to check them out at simgrid.com, go to Google and look up the SimGrid, and you won't be disappointed for all things Assetto Corsa Competizione in terms of organising events, whether they be endurance or one-off sprint races. We've also got to give a huge thank you to Coach Dave Academy, of course, without whom this would also not be possible. Coach Dave Academy is the home of amateur and professional sim racers looking to up their game through coaching, setups and track mats, indeed providing all the best possible information throughout the Assetto Corsa Competizione platform to enable you to take your racing a step further, whether it's the setup of the car or knowing those little things about the track which will be able to edge you up front and into the lead. As we say hello to all of you in the chat, whether it be on the Twitch chat, Shadow Stalker DBS, Low Power, CP Racing Drivers Room, it's good to see you guys in there, and I hope to all of you tuning in today, you're having a good week so far, and indeed you're doing very well. But let's come on to our championship standings. Here's our top 10 currently, and as we can see there, we have the dominant runaway championship leader at the moment, and that is Vez Field, the driver running away with things with 344 points and making it another win last time out in round 5 at Misano. And whilst he had a clear run at Misano, it was a very challenging race in the battle for the rest of the podium. And we can see that whilst he wasn't on the podium in the end, Brett Crewcam is now in P2 on 270 points, picking up a strong result once again at Misano, and Ross Bartle is nipping on his heels, only 5 points down in P3. The 2 Bentley drivers expected to go toe-to-toe today, and we'll look forward to seeing who is going to come out on top. We then have our P4 man of Mathis Voss there on 255 points, and Voss really being the driver who was expected to put in a huge challenge versus Field, but things have just not gone his way, and all the bad luck has been encountered by Voss. But last time out he was able to bring things home in P3 after a huge battle for 2nd and 3rd place throughout until the very last lap when we saw some major drama, none more so than Ethan Faulkner down in P10 now on 225 points, who ran out of fuel right at the end of the race on the final lap with only 2 corners to go, and it was a shock to the system for everybody, and it really was one of those races. But another driver who had a major shock to the system last time out, albeit now it's been a repeat twice over, Jonathan Atkinson, who P5 there in the championship on 253 points. He'll be expecting that he would be higher up in the championship. Indeed, going into Misano, he was further up, he was in the top 3, but much like what happened at Snetterton, Atkinson received an incident on lap number 1, which was not his fault. He was the victim of an incident which saw him have to recover his entire race, and at Misano it was a major challenge for our P5 man. We look a little bit further down the standings and we can see that in P11 after that fantastic run to 2nd place last time out Misano, Chris Zoiga there in the Porsche 183 points and starting to pick up a little bit more momentum after being a little bit clear of the top standings over the last couple of races, but Zoiga always a threat there, but really finding his form at Misano. And then looking further down we can see there we've got Niels Jun in P18 on 147 points, the Mercedes driver looking to get some good points on the board today at our circuit. Going down to our 21st to 30th drivers here, we can see Richard Jepp in P21 on 140 points and being hunted by Ingo Hermann on 136 points, the Porsche, and the Mercedes drivers are expected to go toe-to-toe once again today. And we've also got Bill Mustakis there down in P26 on 115 points. Right in the thick of it is the Bentley driver and looking to try and get some more points on the board. From 31st to 40th, we've still got some other drivers running, of course, and some returning drivers tonight, with a number of drivers deciding to miss both Misano in round number 5 and Snetterton in round number 4. Not favourable tracks, and our drivers are all permitted free withdrawals. They do not have to race in all 8 races. They are permitted with free withdrawals over the course of the season, and we are anticipating the return of Mia Swinson tonight, P39 currently in the Ferrari 488 GT3 Evo on 78 points, and whilst we've had her absence over the last couple of rounds, we're expecting the Ferrari driver to be fast and ferocious here tonight. And then looking at our final Porsche standings, 41st to 51st there, we can see that this is a good number of drivers who have retired from the series, although we may be expecting the return of Eric de Klerk in the Audi R8 LMS Evo, and we do look forward to that if Eric is rejoining us tonight on those 54 points and looking to get some more points on the board if he is out on the circuit. We do have currently 39 drivers remaining out of our starting 50. That's only natural with regards to withdrawals because personal life comes up and indeed personal matters come in the way. But with our drivers remaining, we can expect some fantastic racing ahead. And speaking of racing, where are we tonight? Well, we are in Hungary. We're at Magyarország in the Hungaroring, and it is a 14-corner circuit. A very, very challenging circuit here, and likened by many to being essentially a Monaco without walls. A very tight and twisty circuit, particularly at the end of Sector 1, running from Turn 4 all the way around to Turn 11. The run through Sector 2, very narrow, and only really one way through each corner, and only single one racing line. Albeit when we get to Sector 3, the run into Turn 12, and then concluding with Turn 14 as we go into that start-finish straight, things start to open up again, and we can expect the focus will be in Sector 2 about getting as close as possible to the driver in front of you to set up a move in Sector 3 or Sector 1. But you need to get it done by the time you get to the end of Turn 3 and the run up to 4, because that's when the track narrows. Some moves can be made into the hairpin style corner at Turn 5, albeit it's more of a sweeping hairpin rather than a narrow hairpin, but the circuit does narrow, and by the time you get to the chicane at Turn 6 and 7, it's time to settle down. The image being provided, of course, by Will Pettinger from wikipedia.org there. And as we come on to the rules once again, as always, there is a mandatory pit stop window in which our drivers will be required to change tyres and take on fuel, 1 litre of fuel minimum, and this is a 10-minute pit window right in the middle of the race. And of course, the big question will lie there: will our drivers try to undercut one another or overcut one another, or will they try something completely different and perhaps completely throw a spanner in the works of another driver? As we look a little bit further down then, we can also see that our driver's briefing tonight will be brought to us by Brian Nagy, the NXTGEN Racing Assetto Corsa Competizione GT3 organiser, and we'll be coming back to our driver's briefing in a brief while, as that's not due to get underway for at least another 6.5 minutes. So let's head to the circuit whilst we are waiting. Now, as you can see, with regards to our temperatures today, it is a scorcher in Hungary right now. It is very hot. 41 degrees centigrade is the ambient temperature, and we are looking at a track temperature currently of 51 degrees Celsius. You would not want to be walking on that tarmac right now, and as a result, as we can see, Gianpetro here making his way out the final corner onto another lap. What are going to be the implications of these tyre temperatures, you ask? Well, it's going to be the case that tyres are going to be extremely sensitive tonight. A little bit of overworking of the tyre, and that could spell doom for any driver who's pushing the tyres too hard, and particularly our Porsche drivers, who have been the dominant drivers in terms of the car being brought to circuits. It does seem as though the Porsches have had a little bit of an advantage over the other drivers here, but we are expecting those tyres are going to be extremely sensitive, and the Porsche is one of the most sensitive cars when it comes to tyres, and that is the concern, of course, that all of our drivers will have. But everybody's been reporting in the pre-practice sessions prior to today, and we do have this final practice session right now, albeit only 5 minutes of it remaining. Our drivers were reporting that they were very concerned about the tyre temperatures and just how that would have implications for their race, and that is going to be one of the biggest challenges here, as we see Gianpetro parking it up coming out of turn number 5 there. Indeed, I think a number of drivers starting to make their way back to the pits as we look a little bit closer at Delcom here. Romain Delcom, of course, the Belgian driver from Valkyrie Esport, who's been a very strong contender throughout the season so far, but he's had some rough races, particularly at Snetterton Betterton. It didn't quite work out the way he wanted it to, and he's looking to get some solid results on the board because he's got some mileage still to go, and we do wonder how high up the order the Belgian can finish come the end of the season. But of course, it's one race at a time, and many of our drivers will be taking it as one race at a time, and we look forward to seeing what they can all achieve at this circuit. And really, it has been a story of where the Porsches have been very strong when we haven't had the extreme conditions. It's then been the case when we do get these extreme conditions, we start to see cars appear out of nowhere. Alternative drivers putting in very solid performances, which would perhaps undermine the expectations. And we haven't had anybody say to us tonight that they're expecting it to be Porsche dominant or Ferrari dominant. Indeed, everybody baited with breath right now, and it's those temperatures which many are concerned about. Indeed, the engineers and indeed the setup teams behind the cars all very worried about how those temperatures are going to play out, and it's going to be the driver who can keep their hull in the midst of the heat that is going to be bringing home the win. And we can see Crew Camp here, the Grumpy Monkey machine, one of the two Grumpy Monkey machines from South Africa, of course, making his way up into turn 4 right now. And we have seen from the Bentley drivers, it has been a story of consistency in the race. And will we see a similar tale today, that they may not be as strong in qualifying, as we get a slight latency spike there, as we've got more drivers still joining us with 5 minutes to go until the drivers briefing. Remember, our drivers can join the server that we're hosting this on right up to when that drivers briefing is due to occur. But Crew Camp looking to get another solid result on the board today, and we have seen from both Crew Camp and also Bartle that both of them, the two Grumpy Monkeys, as we see Bartle here making his way into turn 2, they have perhaps been some of the most consistent drivers there, and in that Bentley they look very strong in race trim, albeit in qualifying perhaps not as strong as others, but the Bentley has been looking very potent in that race. It's almost as if the Boatley, as some refer to it as, the nickname it's given, just seems to come alive in the race, and it's the drivers at the helm who are able to steer the ship right home. And as he makes his way through turn 5, we look forward to seeing what the two Grumpy Monkey guys can do, and we will see some battling between them because they are right up there in those championship standings now, really battling for places in the top 5, if not the top 3. Now, we do have some other drivers still making their way around the course, and a driver who we should introduce once again is the Get Speed driver, Preston Lambert, the American driver, the number 87 driver. Unfortunately, I didn't have the chance to be able to grab his fault going into tonight's race. I couldn't quite catch Preston as he was trying to get into the car. He was too focused on the race, but it's good to see Preston out here once again, and the American, whilst he's been a bit further down the field than others, he has been a joy to watch. We've seen some fantastic battles between himself and other drivers lower down the field, and really trying to put in a good performance in that midfield pack today. And it has been a season where he's gone from strength to strength as he makes his way into turn 5 right now. We look forward to seeing what the Mercedes driver can do again. And one thing our drivers will have to consider in this race in particular, because of how narrow sector 2 is, i.e. from turn 4 all the way around to turn 11, if they do happen to come out behind some of our slower drivers who do not have to give up the place because they're battling for track position, then it is going to be a challenge, because of course they'll lose the time behind that driver through this tight and twisty section until they start to make their way down towards turn 12. But turn 12 is a very long way away, as we see Lambert right now making his way through turn number 11 and now in the run down towards 12. That's how long sector 2 is. It's long, it's windy, and it's narrow. As he comes down to 12 right now, that's when the overtaking opportunities open up once again. And as we say hello to Kevin Randall in the Facebook chat, and also to Yeezy TV, who's supporting Valkyrie Esport in the YouTube chat. Be sure to let me know, folks, who you are cheering on in the respective chats on the channels. I can see all of them, so don't worry, your message won't be missed. Let me know who's your favourite. Let me know what you're expecting is going to happen tonight in terms of the drivers. And the one driver who everybody will be watching with bated breath will be Ethan Faulkner, the Irishman who was robbed of a very strong finish in the end by a tiny bit of fuel not being in the car. And really, it is for him, the distinct GG driver, to bounce back tonight and do everything he can to prove he can be on that podium. The number 67 driver who's really come alive in the last couple of rounds, and we look forward to seeing what he can achieve here at the Hungarian circuit today. But it is going to be a major challenge for Faulkner, and we do look forward to seeing how he rises to the occasion. We'll have our drivers briefing in just under 2 minutes right now, folks, as everybody is just wrapping up their final laps as we see Faulkner parking it up. We have got Gareth Mills as well, albeit he's off in the distance there out of turn 1, and the GM Racing driver here today running a different livery, an upgraded livery on the Audi. They decided to paint the car for Hungary for the final 3 rounds. We can see it there with the change of colours, with the more prominent green Gareth Mills logo on the side, and the South African, a number of favourites, a number of spectators really do love watching Gareth race, and whilst he has been a little bit down the order, he's been putting in some consistent performances, and the number 5 driver is definitely one to watch out for today and see if he can break back up into that top 20, and I'm sure he has the potential to as he makes his way through turn at number 5. And everybody now hopping to the pits, and very shortly we'll be getting that driver's briefing underway, and speaking of which, I think it's about to get underway. So as always, what I'll do, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be listening in as it will be brought to us by Brian and Nagy tonight, and when we do get questions, I'll read those out for you, because of course you cannot see the Discord voice communications platform that we are using in order to voice any questions from our drivers. This driver's briefing, of course, being critical to outline any potential rules or special rules that are being applied to the circuit we're racing at tonight, and also any concerns about penalties, particularly on lap number 1. But right now I can tell you everybody has parked up in the pits and is now waiting for the wise words of Mr. Nagy.
Hey, good evening, everybody. Kevin's running a little bit late with work, so I'm going to fill in for him until he gets here. Welcome to round 6 of the NXTGEN GT3 Championship. So you guys, a little bit of light field this week, so track space should be a little bit more open for everybody through qualifying in the race. Obviously, track temps are extremely hot, so you guys have all, I'm sure, been working on your setups and tire conservation for the race, because I'm sure they're going to be gone after the first 10 minutes. You can blame Kevin for the track temperatures. Qualifying, obviously, it's the usual deal. Just the biggest thing we ask, and we're going to watch, is the last sector not to be queuing up to make space. You have the entire outlap to make space in qualifying. If you slow down to queue the field up and back the field up in the final corners, you might get DQ'd from qualifying, have to start at the back of the grid. Once one car starts to queue, it kind of affects everybody else. So the last few weeks have been pretty good about everybody going out and getting space and making their own space on the track for qualifying. By the time they get to the last sector, they're not on top of each other. So I know it's only 15 minutes, but still plenty of time. You're only going to get a couple good laps anyways before the tires are junk. So just use your heads when you go out for qualifying to not all rush out there at once and just kind of make your own gap on the racetrack. 27 of you, so shouldn't be as difficult as, let's say, the first couple rounds. Racing's been pretty good the last few weeks. You guys have been doing really good. A lot of good competition throughout the field, not just up top, but pretty much all through the field we've been watching. Incidents have been down quite a bit since the start, so that's been good. Let's hope we can kind of keep that process going. I know this track is a little difficult as far as overtakes go, just due to the general nature of the way the track's laid out and the lack of opportune passing zones around Hungaroring, but there are places where you can make the passes, as you know. So just use your heads. It's a long race, especially on the start. Everybody's going to funnel down that first turn. It'll be 3-4 wide probably. Just kind of use your heads, give yourself space. If you're faster, you will get around the guy or girl in front of you in time. Just no reason to force it on the start. It's a long race. People are going to be falling off quick with the track temperatures, so just remember that. Usual rules apply. Obviously, live stewarding. Post-race reports will be done if needed. Don't forget your pit window. Other than anything else, if you guys got any questions, you can post them in the chat, because I guess we don't have voice open. If not, you're free to leave, and we'll forward to qualifying in a couple minutes. Best of luck tonight. Thank you.
So that was the driver's briefing there by Brian Nagy, and as well, we're finding out right now, nobody posting any questions. As a result, we will be getting underway very shortly with qualifying. But indeed, you could hear there the emphasis on the fact that the temperatures today are going to be excruciatingly high, and it's going to be a race around car and particularly tyre management. And as we jump back to the live screens right now where everybody is parked in the pits, you can imagine that everybody is really thinking right now about not pushing too hard. Of course, qualifying is a major challenge for the simple reason that in qualifying it is all about that one lap performance, about that one lap pace, and absolutely nailing it. And that is going to be a challenge in itself, because every time a driver pushes hard on the compound in qualifying, they've got to keep in mind that they are going to be taking a lot of life out the tyre. But we can see in those final 3 practice times there, Yesfield leading once again with 44.118, 3.5 tenths ahead of Voss. And Voss, having a very strong record in qualifying, hasn't made it 5 out of 5, has made it 4 out of 5 in terms of pole position, missing out last time out at Misano, the front row being locked out by Field and Zoiga. As we're about to get ready for qualifying, ladies and gentlemen, we will be right back as they're all starting to head out onto circuit. With all of our drivers eagerly getting out onto circuit now, of course they'll have to find themselves some track position here, and they'll naturally space out over time as they all proceed around. Now the focus will be, of course, to trying to get those tyre temperatures up as quickly as possible as they proceed around the circuit, and that in itself will not be a major challenge. But here's the thing, if you warm up the tyres too much, then it may be the case over the course of the one lap you do, those tyre temps are going to get too high, and as a result you're going to find yourself hitting a compromise qualifying that. And it is that balance of getting the tyre temperatures right before going on to a lap. As we check in with the chat meanwhile, and we can say hello to Zoronic, and we've also got there from Mathis Voss himself on the YouTube channel, and Voss we can see right now driving around, so he quickly popped in to say hello, and it's good to hear from him. Really hard tonight, the temperature of the track is so hot, indeed that coming from one of our most potent drivers in the field as it stood over the course of this season. But speaking of potent drivers, we can see that right now our championship lead, the number 420 car of CHF Motorsports for Yesfield, making his way round, but ahead of him is Jonathan Atkinson, the British driver, the OTL Racing driver, making his way out of turn number 11 and down towards turn number 12 right now. All of our drivers getting around there as quickly as possible, as I believe that is Sylvain Pastores, who's just making his way through turn 5. You're looking at the Swede right now. As we hop back to Atkinson, we're going to jump on board here with the Bentley driver for his opening flying lap here. As we do see, I think that's a McLaren 650S just ahead of him, but we're going to jump on board with Atkinson and take you around the lap. So as we get on board with his dash cam here, coming out of the final corner then and charging it down the start-finish straight. Now it's all about guns, guns, guns as the Bentley driver goes full throttle all the way down to turn 1. The first of a number of hairpin style corners or low-speed corners here, and he'll be looking for his braking mark on the left-hand side, stamping on the brakes before turning through a very tight apex here, but then using the full width of the circuit and getting on the throttle as soon as possible. Now running down towards turn 2 here, a deceptively long run. It looks longer than it is. It's a downhill braking zone, so you have to brake prematurely, coming down through the gears and getting a nice tight line on the entry there, Atkinson, before coming out of the corner and now heading to the right-hander of 3. Full attack through 3 here. You've got to be committed, absolutely full throttle, run off as much as possible, and then coming up the hill. That's the end of sector 1. Now into sector 2. Turn number 4 here, a deceptive right into left combo where it's a little kink, and then as he makes his way out of 4 into a braking zone for 5, a slightly slower sweeping style hairpin here as he comes through turn number 5, and again get on that power as soon as possible to run out wide here, and now into the chicane 6 and 7, and watch how he's going to have to clatter the curb of 6 as hard as possible and then flow through it into 7 here. Not too hard to hit the sleeping policeman of the orange curves as he makes his way into 8, and that's a sweep round into 9, and it's left into right here, and this shows you how tight it is. You can imagine with the Bentley being such a wide car as he comes out of 8 and into out in 9 and into 10, and then coming through into 11 here. That is the completion of sector 2, long and twisty, and now coming into sector 3, the braking zone for turn number 12, coming down hard on the brakes once again, and a very tight corner here. 12, it looks wide, but it's very tight. And now coming into 13, another corner, much like the inverse of turn number 2. You can imagine it's symmetrical to 2 to some extent. 13 as he makes his way out the corner, runs wide into the pit line entry briefly before coming back onto the circuit, and now one more hairpin style corner to complete the lap. As he comes out now, it's all about that throttle, and as he crosses the line, what's it going to be from Atkinson? It is going to be, crossing that timing line, a 44.8, putting in provisional P4, but we've got a lot of drivers still to come through the field, and we look a little bit further back right now, and we can see NXTGEN on a lap as well. The Dutchman from Misano Racing, he's had some good results in qualifying so far. What can the Mercedes driver do here as he comes out of turn and number 12 and into 13? Are looking very composed right now, but the thing is he's got to try and get that car to rotate. You can see a little bit of snap oversteer there as he got on the power initially on the exit of 13 and had to settle the car back down, and that will have cost him approximately half a tenth at least as he makes his way out of the final corner and on to that timing line. And what's it going to be from the Dutchman? It's a 46.4, and we can see that other drivers have gone faster. Sylvain Pastor is just behind him, the AF Course driver from Switzerland, setting into P9 there with a 45.6, and now coming on to another lap. Everybody continuing to get laps in right now, and we can see that we've got Adrian Loisinger coming out the final corner, the Dream Pace Racing driver here in the BMW M6, going for the oddball car, setting a P15 there, but we've plenty more lap time to go, and I think it's going to be a very huge challenge here for the BMW M6 driver. It's powerful on the straights as the M6, but it really struggles in the corners, and this is the one circuit where you do not want a car that struggles in the corners, particularly in Sector 2 where it's going to lose so much time. And at 46.9, I don't think it's indicative of his true pace, but I think it is an indication that he might find himself a little bit further down the order today compared to us. As everybody's continuing to go around, we do have 29 drivers here at the circuit today, and Chris Zoiger right now, the CHF Motorsport driver, the teammate of Jez Field, of course, making his way into turn number 12 right now. He hasn't set a lap so far, as he makes his way then out of turn at number 12 and into 13. Only 2 corners to go, starting with this one. And looking very smooth here, the Porsche driver, as he comes out the corner. He's got Voss ahead of him. And I think using Voss as a little bit of a pace marker car here as he comes out of the final corner. And what's it going to be from the Swiss as he comes across that timeline? Runs a bit wide there, but I think that'll be permitted. And he comes across that timeline, and it's P3. And he's only a tenth off of Voss, but he's 2.5 tenths down on Field, who is our provisional poleman. Is the 420 car that you're looking at right now. And that's after one flying lap of qualifying. Indeed, Field taking the initiative early on, but we can expect plenty more as we go. Now, I did have the opportunity to catch up with a couple of the drivers going into tonight's round, and we're going to start off with Atkinson. And it was quite a candid conversation with Atkinson, I must admit, and he was saying that going into tonight, he's feeling as though it's going to be a long race, particularly with the track temperatures, and we talked about that earlier, of course, and he reckons it's all going to be about tyre management, driving to the grip and not slipping on the tyre too much. He does feel, however, he has been cheated of a couple of results, albeit not saying that he's angry at losing out on the results, but of course the frustration of being involved in instance on lap 1 at both Snetterton and Misano, where he's just simply lost out and then had to make 2 recovery drives. And he was very proud of the comeback at Snetterton, but Misano was one to forget, and he just wants to survive lap 1 today, does Atkinson. So a prayer for Atkinson. He wants to come home after completing lap number 1. He doesn't want to be involved in an incident on lap number 1. Will it be the case today? We have our fingers crossed, of course, and good luck to him and all of our drivers as we look a little bit further around the order. And we can see Dave Jr. right now, the Team SRHI number 10 car there, and it's indeed a number 13 in this series, but number 10 most likely for the team's the number 10 driver, as we can see him flowing through the corners right now. In fact, he is the number 10 car. I'm losing my eyesight here, folks. Shows you how old my eyes are getting, as we can see the American making his way through at turn at number 9 and into, well, he's number 10 and 11 as he comes around down towards number 12 right now. P13 currently a second down on our leader, but you can see how tight it is from P14 all the way up to our leader, all separated by only a second. And this qualifying is incredibly tight. We've seen some very tight qualifying sessions, but this one of the tightest we have seen for some time, and it definitely shows as we still got half the qualifying session to go. And Junior popping in to the pits. Remember, our drivers are not allowed to use the return to garage feature. They must drive around and come into the pits, otherwise they'll be disqualified from qualifying and be forced to start at the back. Now, speaking of a driver who's going to come from the back in terms of the championship standings tonight if they get a good result, here's Mia Svensson, the Intruder Racing team driver in the Ferrari 488, of course, making her way through turn at number 3 right now. Currently P12 in the provisional qualifying standings on a 44.8, and Svensson been a very strong driver when racing, and we look forward to a lot more from Svensson tonight. And I can imagine this Ferrari has got a good chance of being well up there inside the top 10 in qualifying, indeed in the race being well inside the top 10. Svensson, a very committed driver, and whilst it has been a difficult season, particularly the opening race with the disconnection, we're able to get that issue fixed in collaboration with the organisers. And Svensson, of course, hoping most likely that there's no more disconnect, but focused very heavily on the race, and we look forward to seeing what she can achieve here as she's making her way right now, coming through 8 and up into 9, and subsequently it will be 10 and 11, going through at 10 right now, the left-hander before the right-hander of 11, and then coming down that hill towards turn at number 12. We're going to stay with the Ferrari for a little bit longer as she makes her way down into sector 3, coming into that braking zone, of course, before 13 and 14 away, 2 more corners, 6 more minutes of qualifying here. And as we check in with you guys and girls in the chat, we can see everybody getting excited. CP Racing looking forward to a big battle between Voss and Field. We will, of course, have to wait and see whether that is going to be the case as Svensson decides to pop to the pits, and a number of drivers doing so. And Faulkner now making his way around through turn number 4 there. And the Irishman, I did have a brief chat with the Irishman going into tonight, the number 67 driver. And he do thinks that his expectations will be much lower than at Misano, but he believes the key to this race will be managing the tyres. Indeed, a lot of drivers saying that throughout the 2 stints of the race as the temperatures are so high. And given the fact that he considers this track to be Formula 1's Monaco Grand Prix but without any barriers, if he can manage the tyres without any major mistakes, he does think a second chance of the podium could be on the cards. And Fulton, I really think right now, will be digging deep, and mentally, psychologically, how do you bounce back from what happened last week? And in Fulton's case, you've just got to see it as another day in the office. You've got to think, right, that happened, we put it aside, we know we had the pace to be on the podium, and he's got to do it all again today. And currently in P7, he is half a second off of our provisional pole lap, which has been upgraded to a 44.121 by Mathis Voss. And how close is it? Well, I can tell you that in the pole position shootout right now, Voss, the guy you're looking at, the Intruder Racing Team driver from France here, is only 3 thousandths ahead of Field in qualifying. And that is how close it is between Field and Voss, and we have seen the two of them so matched in pace in the race, and now it's coming to life in qualifying. And Field did say earlier on in the season, when we interviewed him after a couple of races, particularly after round number 3, he was saying that the fact that he felt in qualifying he was really not delivering the performance he expected. Where he's delivering now, he's found where the spanner was in the works of his qualifying machine. And as we look to Field, the P2 man currently, he is really doing everything he can, as he's got Chris Zoiga there behind him. The 2 CHF Motorsport drivers nose to tail here, and I think it may be the case they're both getting themselves set up for another lap of qualifying, indeed a couple of laps of qualifying. Perhaps they're deciding to use one another as tow machines around the circuit right now, i.e. one of them will tuck in to the slipstream of the other. As you can see, we've got Field warming up the tyres and Zuga doing the same here. Both of them, sorry, Zoiga both doing the same. They're both trying to warm up those tyres and staying in formation. As remember, we did hear in the driver's briefing that nobody is allowed to park up the car and cause a queue in the final sector. They have to go. So this may be a little bit of a gamble for Zoiga in terms of staying in the slipstream of Field here. And if he gets bunched up too much, if Field makes a mistake, it may be an aborted lap for the pair of them. It will come at a cost, of course, because then they'll only have one more lap to go. Now, I can tell you who's jumped up into P3 very recently. Kevin Harikonen here, the Frenchman, with a very strong lap there. The Intruder Racing Team driver making his way out of turn number 1 and down towards turn number 2 right now. And that is a phenomenal lap from the driver as he makes his way in to the left-hander there. And a slightly revised livery by the looks of things on Harikonen's car there. I'm not sure if that's a visual glitch or alternative, so I didn't hear about a change of livery, but it's looking very fetching if so, as he makes his way through turn 3 right now. And that Ferrari looking beautiful, as we've got a Ferrari there parked up coming out of turn 3, and I believe that is the Ferrari of Tony Hill, who is just very gradually returned to the circuit right now. I think he's worried about cars coming through and doesn't want to cause an obstruction, but the ULAGS driver there, the Brit in the number 50 car, having a difficult qualifying session down in P26 currently, 2.5 seconds off of pole. And what can Hill do to try and get himself a little bit further up the order? That is the big question, as Hill has been a bit further down, and we are hearing that the livery for what is Harikonen should be the same as some of the other ITR drivers. So I think we've got a slight visual bug there, folks, which we will try and fix for next time. Apologies for that. I'm not sure what's happened there, but we can see Harikonen right now making his way out of turn number 11 and heading down towards 12. As we say hello to Governor ITR in the Twitch chat there, and Governor will know all about the ITR liveries because, of course, he is one of the senior members of the Intruder Racing Team, watching his drivers today and indeed cheering them on all the way through. With 2 minutes this qualifying session to go, I can tell you that it's still Voss on provisional pole right now, 3,000 separating him from Field in P2, and then Harikonen only a further 300ths down, and we're looking at the P3 man right now as he goes onto a lap, and let's jump on board. So he makes his way then on to the straight and charging down towards turn number 1. The number 723 car coming into that heavy braking zone as we see a car coming out the pits there for its final warm-up lap before qualifying. He goes into the turn 1 hairpin here, and you can see attacking the hairpin, a very aggressive attack angle under braking, and giving himself the best possible rotation through the corner. The rear end slipping out as he now comes up into turn number 2 here, the downhill left-hand corner, and you can see again that aggressive entry angle from Harikonen compared to what we saw from Atkinson early on, using the nose, pointing it into the corner a bit more than the Bentley, and as a result getting that better rotation. But I can imagine the rear will slide around in Harikonen's car when he gets some tyre wear in there in the race if he takes that approach. Up into 4 then, and as he bounces over the apex curve there, very aggressive onto the apex curve, and indeed driving this car, really pointing it at the corner apex, but he goes a little bit wide there out of turn number 5, and you can see as a result of that he's now lost some momentum up into the chicane. But fortunately for him, it's a very short run to the chicane, so it won't cost him too much time, a 10th at most there as he comes out of 7 and into left-hander of 8, flying through through into turn 8 and now into 9, switching back to the right-hander before we've got another left into right combination here, running nice and wide there out of turn number 9 into 10 he goes, and attacking 10 into 11 here, and we can imagine with a bit of traffic forming up ahead that this is going to be a good lap from Harakone as he's making his way down towards 12 right now into the heavy braking zone of 12 he goes, and swiftly transferring the weight of the car forward as he makes his way through 12. And you can see again how the rear is just wobbling a little bit coming out of course, and he's built this car for that rear rotation. You can tell by the way it's responding through the turn of the apex, and as he comes out of 13 and now heads up into 14 here, what's this going to be from our provisional P3 man as he comes through the final corner here? And we switch the exterior cameras. Will it be an improvement, or will it be the case he needs to go again? He's going to have one more lap available to him, and it does not look to be an improvement. It is not at all very close, and I think that one mistake coming out of turn 5 is what cost him the ability to improve, as we see right now that our pole lap has changed. It is now filled with a 43.8, and he does have one more lap to go as Zuga has come across the line, does not improve so far, and that I believe is going to be qualifying for Zoiga there, as we've now got everybody trying to come around and do their final laps. I can tell you that Atkinson and also Lardier have come into the pits, and Atkinson parked up right now, so that is P11 at most for Atkinson, and Voss has completed his qualifying session, so it will not be Voss on pole, as I believe Harakone's coming through there. And then we have also got, looking a little bit further down the order, Svensson parked up in the entry to turn 1 here and jumping back to pits P14. So it does look as though pole position, unless we're expecting a major surprise. We've got Harakone on a lap right now, the Intruder Racing driver making his way through at the right-hander here. And as he comes through turn number 7 and up into 8, through the chicane and into the left-hander, will Harakone be able to improve? He's got a bit of traffic ahead of him here whilst he's still on this qualifying lap. I think it may be the case as the traffic moves out the way there, being very respectful, knowing that a faster driver's coming through and perhaps they were not on a good lap. But can Harakone upset the car, or will it be too much too late? And he goes wide out of 11, and that will be Harakone's qualifying complete. As we see, we've got the number 233 car coming up behind him there. But I think that is Brandon Warren, the American driver from VRS Satellite Racing, just simply moving out of everyone's way with, of course, that aborted lap. But what that does mean, ladies and gentlemen, that unless Ben Walker can suddenly surprise us all, albeit Walker being at 4.5 tenths down on field, it is going to be US Field who takes pole, as Walker is calming down the car. So pole position in the end is going to go to CHF Motorsports, US Field from Switzerland, with a 43.8 as he crosses that time line. He improves once again to a 43.764, and that is qualifying, and pole being improved once again, and field really coming alive in qualifying. But we'll be back very shortly, ladies and gentlemen, for the start of the race. So as we head back then to the live TV images, you can see right now all of our drivers are parked up and getting ready to go. And the big question will be, of course, in our front runners, the two on that front row, Yves Field on the left-hand side and Mathis Voss on the right-hand side. It's been a rivalry between these two. They could be perceived perhaps as our two fastest drivers out there in this championship so far. And whilst they've got a significant number of points, Voss being further down the order with Field being our championship leader by a significant margin, you do have to imagine that Voss would love the opportunity today to take the fight. The Frenchman would love to take the fight to the Swiss and see whether he can show himself to be the #1 Porsche driver around the Hungaroring. But of course, that is going to be one of the many conundrums that our drivers will have to solve today as we look a little bit further down the order. And the one driver who I think will be looking to try and improve after what is a difficult qualifying session in the end will be Brett Krewkamp, who is further down the pack right now, and we can see him there all the way down in P17. He's lining up on what is effectively my apologies, ladies and gentlemen, down on the 9th row of the grid, and not a strong qualifying session as we look inboard with Krewkamp right now, just parked in there in the Bentley. I think he'll be thinking right now that he just wants to get through the opening lap and see if he can gain some places through instance ahead of him, or alternatively just stay in the same position. He won't want to lose any, and the good news for him, of course, in the rolling start sequence, he will be on the inside to turn #1, and having that inside line can give him a good defensive posture. As we look a little bit further down, meanwhile we jump inside the car of Tony Hill, and the Ferrari driver here getting ready to go as well. Down in P26, a very difficult qualifying session for Tony Hill, and it just didn't seem to come together too well, but what can he do in the race? And we know that Hill, a consistent driver on his day, and as a result he'll find himself gaining those positions very gradually as he makes his way through the race distance. Now another driver who we did have that opportunity to catch up with whilst we were walking down the paddock in preparation for today was one Nicholas Tardioli, and I believe Tardioli right now around on the circuit, and he is indeed in P number 12. The number 135 driver, who we can't see too well here, but you can see the Ferrari in the midst of the pack there, and we are saying to the Valkyrie Sport driver about how he's felt about how things have gone, and indeed what he's expecting tonight, and he expects that tomorrow will be a difficult race, but he thinks he should be fine. His teammates and himself had done a couple of practice sessions in order to get a good warm-up in, and he's hoping for a good result. And starting in P12, Tardioli, you can imagine starting on that 6th row of the grid, he's going to be looking for a good run, but he's going to be on the outside into turn 1, and that may pose a bit of a challenge if he doesn't get the best start, because the drivers on the inside may just pip him into turn 1, and being on that outside does leave you vulnerable, of course, to potential lunges or instants coming charging your way from drivers who get it wrong under braking a bit further back. But everyone should be able to keep their cool and leave the steward's office quiet for the time being, or at least that's what our stewards will be hoping. But as we look a little bit further back up the front right now, Ben Walker, a driver who we didn't talk too much about in qualifying, managed to get the car into P4 in the end as the distinct GG driver. Indeed, looking inboard with Ben right now, the McLaren driver, the 720S driver, will be doing everything he can in order to be on that podium, and he was right up there in the battle for the podium at Misano. It was a challenging day, and indeed Walker, I think, feeling frustrated that he just missed out on the podium, and he would love the chance to upset the order, because we have seen a regularity of podium finishes, particularly Voss and Field, but will Walker be able to do it tonight? For the 6th time of asking, will he be able to finally get onto that podium and be able to upset the car? We will wait to see, with only 45 seconds until the rolling start gets underway here, but Walker definitely one to watch out for. We know he is very fast and agile in that McLaren, and it's just the case that he's got to protect the tyres, because once they go, we do know that Walker does seem to, much like the Porsche drives, the McLaren does seem to become a very, very picky car on its tyres, but we will wait and see whether he can master it tonight. As we also note that we've got alongside him, albeit one row back, it is Bartle in P5. Ross Bartle well ahead of his grumpy monkey teammate. His teammate, of course, the crew camp down in P17, but the number 19 car of Bartle qualifying P5, and Bartle with very strong qualifying performance. And will it be the case he can convert that today into another top 5, alternatively a podium finish? Well, we're about to get underway then with that rolling start procedure. And once we do, we'll let our drivers start heading around. They'll be warming up those tyres, and it'll be Yves Field who takes us away. So as we can see, Vez taking off immediately, and Voss actually stalling a little bit there. I think Voss just getting caught out by how quickly he was required to start there. I think he was too busy perhaps just getting some final setup done on the car, but it's okay. Everybody has the time, of course, to make this rolling start as long as they don't take too long. But we can see the pack being bunched up already a little bit there by Field as they make their way into turn 1. I do think it's the case that with regards to this rolling start, that Field would love to have that pack bunched up as much as possible, for the simple reason that that way he can take his time around, and everybody has to suffer the temperature out on circuit right now. You do not want to push round on this parade lap or on this rolling start warm-up lap, for the simple reason that with that ambient temperature and that track temperature still at 51 degrees centigrade and no wind as well, so nothing to call the spectators or indeed us in the commentary box, folks. And I can tell you, we're not even allowed to open a window here due to the fact it's so loud out on circuit. That is the case right now. Everywhere is going to be sweltering, and I can only feel for our drivers in their cockpits right now what it's going to be like there. But we look a little bit further down, and we've got Velkoski down in P20 here, and we can see the Porsche driver making his way out of turn 2 right now. The back to motion driver from Germany, the number 46 car, a lovely livery there on the machine, of course, and indeed looking for another top 20 finish as everybody making their way through right now. And Velkoski been a very consistent driver, been battling for finishing positions inside the top 20 and even a sniff of a top 10 every so often. Will he be able to maintain that form tonight, or will it be another challenge posed to him? Indeed, will the Hungarian circuit be able to put too much pressure on him. Indeed, that is the question for all of our drivers here, as you see they all make their way around. And Gareth Mills will be starting at the back, the Audi driver, not having a good qualifying session, but we can imagine the GM Racing machine will be trying to scythe its way through the field as rapidly as possible, as will the car, of course, of Helder Moreira here, down in P27, and that Aston Martin. We know that Moreira is fast in that car, putting a great performance at Misano last week to pick up a top 10, just snuck into the top 10 right at the end, the Portuguese in the race. And will the number 88 driver be able to repeat that tonight? He's got a long way to go from P26, but we know that Helder can do a phenomenal job. He can indeed, the M2 competition drivers. He makes his way then through the sequence of corners there in the run round from what is turn 9 into 10 and 11 very shortly. And as he makes his way along here, you can see everybody bunching up as we're now starting to get closer and closer to the run. And that is, of course, the run out of turn 14, and we'll be getting that rolling start. And it'll be Esfield, of course, who dictates when we go, as we can see that Voss getting himself set up as well. So we've got a Porsche going a bit wide there, and I think they'll be able to return that as well. Koski going a bit wide out of turn number 12, but now we wait for the rolling start to get underway. A field going as late as possible there, and you can see it's caught out Voss a little bit as they make their way down towards turn 1. And in fact, Field, as a result, being able to get a nice defensive line down into turn 1. As we can see, we've got a Mercedes trying to go incredibly tight on the inside. Everybody piling into the corner here. And as we look a little bit further back, everybody making it through turn 1 relatively unscathed right now. I'm not seeing anybody getting knocked here as they all make it through. A drive-through penalty already for one driver. I think that's Lardier who's got a drive-through penalty, but I think that might be a timing glitch there as they all make their way through turn number 2. Everybody keeping it nice and safe right now, and in fact, as a result, no major incidents, although we are seeing some changes of position here, and I can see that is Ross Bartle who's had a spin. Ross Bartle, and there's been an incident. That is a Valkyrie Esport Porsche that he's been involved in an incident with there, but Bartle having been spun and now parked up and waiting for everyone to come through. In fact, there's been even more carnage here as we just jumped the camera through, and it looks as though that somebody has either rejoined the circuit or there's been just a car that's got into the way, and as a result, that is absolute disaster for a number of drivers there who've dropped all the way down, and we're not sure exactly what's happening, but I can tell you that when all is said and done, right now up at the front, it's Resfield who's still leading as they make their way from the chicane into turn 8 and turn 9. We just caught that instant a little bit too late off the camera there, but as Field's making his way through right now, everybody chasing after, and Zoiga has gained massively. Zoiga up into P3 at the start here, really making the moves, and he is charging after Voss here. He's getting as close as possible right now, as we can see that Faulkner as well in P5 right now behind Ben Walker, and our top 5, this is pretty much the same top 5 as what we saw back at Misano, and as a result, as they make their way through turn number 13 here, we've got Lafloy just behind them as they come through the corner, and Lardier as well, and I do believe that it is Lafloy here in P6 or P7. We've got a small glitch on our time screen, but that will be fixed very shortly as they all make their way out of the first corner. So after one lap, it is Field leading ahead of Voss, followed by Zoiga, who's in P3, then it's Ben Walker in P4, followed by Faulkner in P5, and it's Lafloy in P6, followed by Lardier in P7. Then there's a small gap to Tardioli, who's gained massively on the start, going all the way out to P8. Behind him is Mia Svensson, the American, getting a good gain as well, as we see Jonathan Atkinson has avoided the carnage on lap number 1. He's made it to the end of lap number 1. He'll be breathing a sigh of relief here. He's up into P10. That's your top 10. Then in P11, you've got Kevin Harrakonen right now, Ugan Gianpetro, the Valkyrie Esport Porsche driver there in P12. Then you've got Dave Jr. in P13. We've got Richard Jepp in P14. And then round off our top 15 is Brett Krewkamp, the Grumpy Monkey machine that survived the opening lap. But Ross Bartle right now all the way down in P25. His teammate, as we're hearing that Sylvain Pastoris is in the pits, as is Preston Lambrecht and also Roman Delcom. So those three all involved in that instant. But right now, looking back up towards our leaders, we can see that there is no change currently, but they are all nose to tail. Indeed, those tyre temperatures are now what it's going to be all about, as our top 7 are nose to tail through here. And then we've got Tardioli right now doing a very good job of leading the second pack as they make their way out of turn number 8 and in through 9, 10 and 11. And Tardioli, I think, will at this point be focusing on just keeping his race nice and cool as he makes his way all the way through. And as they come through the right-hander here, you can see here that we've got Tardioli coming into turn number 12 right now. And indeed, a lot of drivers gaining massively. And Harakona into P11 now. The Frenchman pushing on all the same, chasing after Atkinson as they make their way into the left-hander. And as they come through turn number 13 here, you can see getting as close as you possibly can to the back of Atkinson, but not able to find a way through right now. I think everybody's going to be settling down a little bit as we look back up to our leaders, and no change up front. We look a bit further back and we can see the float getting closer to the back of Faulkner here. Will the Frenchman try and go for a move on the Irishman? He's all the way out the back, and as they go into turn one, he looks at a move here and he's going to come to the inside, and Faulkner's not going to defend it too heavily here. A small bit of a door rub there, in fact a bit too much of a door rub, with the fact that Faulkner knocked wide there. And as they make their way out of turn one, we can see that Faulkner now in a battle as they make their way down, and Zoiga there also under pressure. Well, in fact that's not under pressure, he's lapping a driver there, and that's Delcom who's come out the pit. But we look back to what's happening there, and Lardier up into P7, as it's the case that Faulkner now down into P6. What with the fact that we had what was the float come through there, but Faulkner not losing out to Lardier. They're getting wide out of turn one and then having to defend into turn two. So Lardier not gaining the position, but we can see that the float has gained the position as they make their free, and they've got the traffic. And this is where traffic is so painful, with the fact that a back marker has to try and find a way to get out the way in sector 2, and it's near impossible as we can see that Delcom is sandwiched right in the mix of this pack, and Svensson right now will be gaining massively on Tardio as they make their way through turn number 8 here. And you can see Delcom's trying to find every which way to get out of the way, but there's just no room. And behind them, Atkinson, well, he's got Harakonen all up his backside right now, but as they make their way then in towards turn number 11 very shortly, we can see that Atkinson just holding on for the time being as Delcom moves out of the way for as many drivers as possible right now, and they come down the hill. But you can see Harakonen looking for the move, he's going to send it, but he doesn't quite get his nose alongside there, and Atkinson just simply takes his line as they make their way through. And a little bit further back, you can see that's Dave Jr. trying to get a move on here in P14 right now as he makes his way through the corner, and he comes through there and heads around into turn number 14. The final corner once again, the American having a good start here, making his way around to go on to the next lap. That will be lap number 4 very shortly as he goes a bit wide out the final corner there, and we've still got some back markers to be cleared there and be effectively a whole lap down on the field as we look a little bit back up towards the front right now, and we can see Zoiga in P3 having a very strong start. I would argue one of the strongest starts of our top runners here, all the way up and into that P3 position as he makes his way into turn 2. Once again, we can see that pack has spaced out a little bit in the hunt for the lead right now. Everybody keeping their cool, but Tardioli in particular right now has got Svensson over the back of him, albeit Svensson just falling back a little bit through turns 1 and 2 this time out. But the one driver who has got that increasing pressure is Faulkner as we jump on board and look backwards from the Ferrari of Faulkner versus the Porsche of Lardier, who's all over his backside. And the Irishman at this point will be trying everything he can to defend versus that Porsche of Lardier as they make their way through turn number 5. And you can see the body language of the two cars, where at the moment Lardier is pushing a bit harder here, and he is trying to carry more momentum through each of the apexes. And I think Faulkner will be doing a lot of car protection at this point. We're thinking about that long game. He was saying earlier on when we interviewed him before he got in the car was the fact that he was looking to do a huge amount of car management today over both of the stints. I'm really worried about those temperatures, and we can see Lardier backing off here. And I think Lardier may have pushed the tyre compound a bit too much too early on here, as we see that Faulkner really starting to eke away over the course of that sequence of corners in sector 2 as they come out of 11 down into 12 once again. We look further back of course and we can see that Atkinson, he's still got Harakonen behind him here, and Harakonen not going for the nosedive into turn at number 12 this time. Of course Harakonen doing that to try and get in the mind of Atkinson, to make him think he's trying to send a move when there's no way he can do it. But the number 21 driver very wise right now to the Ferrari driver behind him, very alert to him, and as a result just carrying on his way. And he'll have the straight line speed acceleration advantage coming out of the final corner, and he will have that ability to hold on into turn 1 once again as they make their way onto lap number 5. Now as they all come through here, we can see that GM Petro a little bit further back in P12 right now, and the Frenchman Hugo doing everything he can to stay in this battle, as we see there that we've got Harakonen coming out briefly, and I'm wondering whether that's to try and get some cool air into the car there, particularly into the brake ducts and also onto the tyres, because we wouldn't normally see him wave unless he's trying to go for a fake move there into turn 1. But Atkinson's not going to fall for that surely as they make their way down into turn 2 here. But right now everybody bunched up again and waiting for that opportunity, and I think it's going to be a race of patience for a lot of drivers here as we look a little bit further down right now. And I can tell you one driver who is starting to make ground once again is Ross Bartle. After that incident on the opening lap, he's in P22 and he's starting to recover. The next driver up the road from him is Adrian Loisinger, the BMW M6, who's just coming through the front of your camera shot now, and we can see Bartle following after him through turn number 3, and he's hunting down the gap, 1.8 seconds. But meanwhile, back up front, Field right now, he's got a second advantage over what is Voss at the time. But you can see here how both drivers are holding very similar lines. And to give you an idea, they are practically equal in lap time right now. That last lap of 44.9 from our race leader. Meanwhile, Voss, who you're looking at right now, our P2 man from Intruder Racing, what was a 45.0. So literally only separated by a tenth. And I think this is all part of the management game here. They have to be wary. But I can see behind them, we have got Lafloid looking for a potential move here versus Walker. But again, it's just a feint to the inside. But Walker goes a little bit deep into 12 as a result, and now as they make their way into 13, you can see Lafloid trying to find every which way to switch back and find a way on the inside into 13, but Walker making that McLaren as wide as possible. But I think Walker's going to be vulnerable here as he makes his way through 14 and down towards turn number 1 once again. And if Lafloid can get a good run here in that toe, I think it's going to be the best opportunity he could ask for as he makes his way out. But he gets a little bit wide on the exit curve there, and as we ride on board, we're inboard right now on the roll cage of Lafloid's car. You can see him making their way down. He's just weaving out a little bit, and I think this is just to try and throw some dummy moves in, but there's going to be no way through as they bunch up through the apex of turn number 1. But you can definitely see how Lafloid really feels at this point in the race. He has got the pace by comparison to the McLaren ahead of him, but he's got to find a way through. And after turns 2 and 3 in the run up to 4, there's not many more opportunities. We see Walker there go a little bit deep, but Lafloid also following him, and that's the thing he's also got to be careful of now, Lafloid. The fact that he'll start to cause himself to go for a symmetry of the guy in front, where he'll start to drive the way the guy in front is because he becomes so fixated on trying to get as close as possible to the back of the car in front of him. Instead, he's just got to wait for those opportunities as they make their way through turn number 4 and head up towards 5 once again here. As they come out of turn number 5 and head towards the chicane, you can see now there's going to be no way through it, and this is a major mistake from Walker, but they do bunch up under braking into that chicane, and Walker definitely having to nurse that McLaren right now as he makes his way in towards turn number 8 and then through to 9. Meanwhile, a little bit further back, we can see that Svensson still hunting down Tardioli. There hasn't really been too many changes right now between these guys. They're all stuck together, and we can see at the head of the pack, that is, by the looks of things, that is Faulkner at the head of the pack right now. Our P6 man who's fallen off the hunt of the top 5 positions, albeit he's only 2.7 seconds down on Lafloid, we should point out, but he has fallen down a little bit. But this is P6 all the way back to approximately P14 chasing after, and you've got 8 cars all following him around on circuit. He's dictating the pace for every single one of these, and I do think in particular that Harikonen would love a shot, as we hear there is a drive-through penalty for Delcom, and we're just going to check out as to why that is very shortly for you, ladies and gentlemen. But focusing on the here and now with Harikonen in P10, he is chasing after Atkinson. In fact, I think we've had a driver make a mistake. Alternatively, someone's dropped down the order because we are missing a driver right now as we're trying to find out what has happened to somebody. In fact, our timing screen's just been updated, so it's a small timing screen glitch again, folks. Apologies for that. But we can see Harikonen definitely in P11. He's not in P10. We haven't had somebody disappear off the face of the earth. And as a result, as they make their way into turn 1, we can see Atkinson going a bit deep. And this could be the opportunity Harikonen's been waiting for. Atkinson will have that inside line, though, into turn 2. He's going to defend it. And as they make their way into the braking zone here, it's going to be Atkinson on the inside, Harikonen on the outside. And I think the Ferrari driver's going to have to look for the cutback momentum up into 4 if he wants to get this done. But that Bentley's so strong and planted out of these corners. And whilst that Ferrari is the more nimble car, you can see how Atkinson is frustrating Harikonen as he's stuck in behind right now, and this doesn't help Harikonen because GM Petro, of course, will be looking for any opportunity where Harikonen makes a mistake or lets any potential frustration get to him. But ahead, you can see Tardioli here looking for a move versus Lardier up into the chicane. Is he going to go for this into the chicane? Surely not. No, he backs out of it. I was going to say that looked sexy because I think Harikonen's actually just made the move for P10. He has made it, and in fact, I think, well, it's the case that we have got Harikonen up 2 places there. As we can see as well, we've got GM Petro's gained. I think Atkinson made a mistake coming out of turn number 5, and as a result has dropped down to P12, and it's the case now the Bentley driver has lost 2 places, and we are hearing from one of the trackside stewards he ran wide out of turn 5, and as a result he lost the momentum into the chicane, and that's how he's dropped the 2 places. So some drives on the move, but Atkinson just dropping a couple, but I think focusing on the bigger picture right now, as we can see that the Bentley are not looking too composed right now coming out of 12, looking as though it went a little bit deep. I think Atkinson just building up once again. The next driver who may be coming for the attack on him will be Dave Jr. Now, of course, at this point, you're probably wondering, why has this man right here at Delcom, why was he awarded a drive-through penalty, the number 23 driver? That was because of the incident between him and the number 19 driver, and that was Ross Bartle. You remember we saw Ross Bartle, and we also saw Valkyrie Esport Porsche coming out of turn 3 where there'd been that incident. That explains it, as we can see here, Bartle versus Brandon Warren. As they come across the timing line here, it's Ferrari versus Bentley. It's the Italian Stallion versus the British Bulldog as they make their way down towards turn number 1. And Warren on the outside here. I think he's going to look for a cut back in if he's going to do it at all. But it is the case the American right now has to give up the position. He hasn't got the fight back here, but I think Bartel will naturally have the pace versus the VRS satellite racing driver. But of course, Warren would love to continue this momentum. He's in P20 right now, and that would be a good result for him. But I think there'll be some places further up the order if he keeps it sweet and simple and continues to follow Bartel around, doesn't battle too hard, because he's got Velkoski chasing after him and Loisinger just behind, and these guys will be coming together if not. Meanwhile, a little bit further up right now, I can tell you that Jesse Monrose, the Frenchman, the BSP racing driver in the Bentley in P17, he's got Ewan behind him, has Monrose and Nilsson just behind as they make their way up into the chicane once again here. We can see the BSP racing driver just falling back a little bit from Horman. Horman putting in slightly faster laps by a tenth a lap we're seeing on our timing screens here, and Ewan getting ever closer. Ewan starting to really build up that pressure, and we've only covered 14 minutes of the 75-minute race distance so far, and I do think it's the case that right now that tyre wear is starting to creep in for some of the drivers, as we can see further around that they make their way out of turn at number 11, and we can see that Monrose goes deep. Ewan is going to be looking to the inside into 12, and as they come into the braking zone, and no move this time, but Monrose under huge pressure and locking up there into 12. I do think that Ewan's going to be looking for a move, but it will be down into turn number 1 as we look a little bit further up the order once again, and we can see that Field and Voss breaking away, and Zoiger just back in P3 right now. No change as Walker and Lafloy in P4 and P5. But coming back to that battle for P17, we can see that it's the case as they come out of the corner here. They make their way onto the straight, and Ewan looking as aggressive as possible here, and Monrose battling to the inside, defending to the inside here, trying to cost Ewan the slipstream, but Ewan's going to look for it. He's going to go on the inside here is Niels, but there's no way through as we can see Monrose, the later breaker of the two of them, and able to stop the car in time as they both come out of turn 1 and head down towards turn 2, and Ewan having to back off now after going a bit too aggressive on the brakes. They're a bit too foolhardy on the brakes, and Horman there just going a bit too deep out of turn 2, but we can see Monrose also doing the same. Meanwhile, back up front, we can see Faulkner right now has got a huge trail of cars still being behind him. Faulkner going a bit deep there into turn 5 as we ride on board here with the Ferrari driver. You're right on board with the Irishman and looking back from his car, the number 67 car. And I think Faulkner right now really having to try and balance the car. It's almost as if it's on a knife edge, this car, with regards to the tyre temperatures. And we can see it through some of the corners. It's just proving to be a little bit prickly as he comes through their turn at number 8 and then into 9 very shortly. And as he runs through the corners here, 9 and 10 and 11 coming up, we can see that Faulkner really having to work the car as much as possible right now, and it is the case that Lardier looking strong as they come out of 11 and head down towards 12 here, and I do imagine that Lardier has backed off for a couple of laps here just to put some pressure on. You can see he goes deep into 12 and Lardier trying to find a way in, flashes lights, doing everything he can, and he goes to the move on the inside. There's contact as Lardier goes to the little quick lunge there, and Faulkner is pushed wide, and we can see that now the train will start to come through as Faulkner has to defend versus Harikonen here, and as they make their way through 14, this is going to frustrate Faulkner no end, as we can see Tardioli has got clear of these two, but he has to try and find his way past Lardier now, and is it going to be the case that everybody bunches up behind Lardier as they make their way onto lap number 10? Will we see a move from Harikonen? Harikonen comes out, Faulkner defends very slightly here, just slightly coming off the racing line, but we can see how the two Ferrari drives just side by side, and Faulkner's squeezing Harikonen as much as possible to say to him, if you want the space, you've got it, but you're going to have to earn as much of it as you can. As we see behind, we've got Atkinson versus GM Petro for P11 right now, as they come down to turn 2, and Atkinson trying to go all the way round and then some, but he's got to be so wary of Dave Jr. who's trying to find a way on the inside, and as they make their way out to turn 2 and into 3, there's no change, but right now I can tell you that Tardioli all over the back of Lardier here, and the Frenchman only needed a catalyst to ignite the spark, and he's now got it, as we see Lardier goes wide, indeed a lot of them going wide out of turn number 4, and the tyre wear is now starting to kick in those tyres, as we see Lardier goes wide, and as a result Tardioli seizes the opportunity, he jumps up into P6, and they all bunch up into the chicane, and this is absolutely, oh goodness me, and it is Lardier went to the wall there. I don't think there was contact, or if there was, it was a tiny tap, and it would have been Faulkner who would have perhaps tapped him on the back, but we'll wait for the stewards to investigate that one. But it's the case that right now Faulkner back up into P6 as he makes his, well, sorry, P7 as they make their way through here, but it's been drama as they make their way through, and now Tardioli is leading this train and starting to break away as they make their way down into turn turn number 12, and it's all kicked off. The train wasn't going to stay calm forever, as we see Faulkner in P7 right now having to fend everybody off, and I see Dave Jr. He's looking for a potential move on Atkinson, but there's no way through right now, as we're seeing some more penalties being brought in as well, and we'll find out about those very shortly for you folks. But staying with the here and now with the live TV pictures rather than the spreadsheet on my left hand screen, I can tell you that Junior is pushing Atkinson as much as possible, and this is the battle for P6. We have got 8 drivers trying to fight over that P6 position right now, and at the head of the pack is Tardioli, who's breaking away. So Faulkner in P7, he's got Harrakonen all over the back of him as they make their way out to turn 1, and Faulkner will not give in. He does not want to give way anymore. Faulkner, the Irishman, disappointed with what happened last time at Misano, is doing everything to hold on to the position and turning this into a Monaco circuit. He wants this position. He's going to make that Ferrari as wide as he can. As they make their way out of turn number 3 once again, and you can see how everybody, Constantine is up behind the lead Ferrari here into turn 4, and now it becomes that case of everybody has to nail their braking point, they have to nail their turning point, they have to nail the throttle on the apex, as we see there that Crewcam in the back of this pack, he is getting closer to the back. Well, Dave Jr. in fact got past him there, and we didn't quite see that on camera, so Jr. has gained the position, but now he's trying to hunt after Atkinson as they make their way through here, and they all come through the chicane once again, and Richard Jepp is behind the Hungaroring Racing Machine. We haven't seen too much of the Briton so far, but he's on the back of this pack, and then we've got a sizable gap to Ingo Horman down in P15, 4.5 seconds. He was just coming through the sweepers there as he makes his way up to the back of this pack. You can see him again in the rear of your camera shot, but meanwhile back at the head of this pack, I can tell you that Tardioli has broken away, and meanwhile Faulkner, it's versus Harrakonen. I think Harrakonen is going to be wary of the fact that he saw what happened when it was the case that Laudier made the move, and he will not want to end up hitting Faulkner on the inside once again, and the stewards I think will be investigating that one as quickly as possible here, and Faulkner of course will be screaming to say that it wasn't his fault as Laudier has come into the pits. I think there is damage on the car after what was essentially the spin out of the chicane on the previous lap. I'm not sure how that was triggered in all honesty folks, but one driver did fall and it was Laudier, unfortunately, as they make their way round once again and they head on to lap number 12 right now. But right now Faulkner, literally the cork in the bottle, and whilst the cork did briefly come out, he stuck it back in, but he stamped on the brakes too hard and he's locked up into turn 1, and Harrakonen is coming through now. How many more drivers will try and capitalise? Well, Harrakonen's not going to come through as Faulkner goes through a defensive line into 2, and Faulkner's trying to put the cork back in the bottle once again, and he does. He holds on for the time being, and now Svensson's behind there, and the Intruder Racing team drivers at Harrakonen and Svensson have to be so careful here because the team boss won't be happy if the two teammates take one another out, and they've just got to be patient and find a way through. Will we see the switch? Perhaps Svensson will feel that she's got the better pace or got a way of finding a way past. I wonder if there'll be some team orders in effect as they make their way through here, and Gian Petro, the Valkyrie esports driver right now, can only look on as he weaves out of the dirty air of Svensson briefly. They all come through the chicane once again, but this is absolutely tight, and I know it's tight at the Hungaroring, but I didn't expect it to be this tight in these temperatures, but they're all nose to tail once again. But briefly we look up front and we can see that Resfield is ahead by 2.5 seconds ahead of Voss right now, and Zoiga is a further 6 seconds back on our race leader, and in fact losing a little bit of time there as he makes his way through it. And then we've got Ben Walker who's got Lafloid behind him, and these two have been catching up to Zoiga over the last couple of laps as we see Tardioli right now. In fact, we've got Faulkner under attack again as they make their way into turn 13, and Harrakonen is trying to go all the way around the outside, but surely on that outside line that's going to leave him vulnerable to going deep, and he does go wide. And will Svensson now look for a way past Harrakonen? No, she doesn't find a way through, but you could see that Gian Petro wants the opportunity here as they make their way through the corner, and as they come out to turn number 14 they head on to another lap, and we can see that I think the patience is starting to thin as we jump on board here with Gian Petro, and as they make their way down once again Gian Petro will be waiting, he'll be seething at the bit right now as they come into the first corner. I think in fact there has been an attempt at another move as we see that I think that is Harrakonen who's gone very deep as they make their way out the corner. Harrakonen going deep into turn 1, and as a result he's going to have to go defensive into 2, but this is giving Faulkner the brief respite that he'd like as we can see Harrakonen defending as much as possible. And if he has to keep defending like this, then Harrakonen will start to lose ground on Faulkner. That's the last thing he will want, for the fact he wants to drag this Irishman back into the battle. He wants that battle to be for P7, not P8. He doesn't want to be at the head of this pack. He wants to be nipping at the head of the pack as they make their way through turn at number 4 once again and head into 5. Hungaroring Racing, Richard Jeps just behind there and catching up to this pack, but you can see everybody getting caught up once again, and Svensson having quite a poor run there out of turn 5. In fact, backing the car off a little bit, and I think Svensson might be trying to cool those tyre temperatures right right now because of the fact getting so close to the back of the Ferraris in front will be only causing things to overheat even more. But what I can tell you, meanwhile, up ahead, we can see that Walker being closed in by Lefloit, but both of them closing up to Zoiga once again. The gap now only a second, and Zoiga definitely struggling after the opening 20 minutes or so. As we look back and we can see there's no change here, but I think we do have a change, and that might be Atkinson here making his way down, and I think he's going on the inside of Gianpetro as they go into turn 12, and we can see that Gianpetro has got Dave Jr. trying to squeeze through, but Jr. can't find a way through, but Atkinson is up a position, and it was just a poor run out of turn number 11 which cost Gianpetro the place, and Atkinson has been waiting. He's got the patience of a saint, and Atkinson up a position into P10 as they make their way through and head round onto another lap. And it's so hard to cut away from this because any moment one of them could go for a move here, but you can see how it's all playing out, and there's been penalties being applied as we're hearing that Ingo Horman has got a drive-through penalty right now. Junior versus what is Gianpetro, but he can't find a way, and it's just a dummy. The Mercedes not having the best of runs, but Faulkner once again under huge pressure from Harikonen as they make their way down into turn 2. As they come into left-hand here, you can see Harikonen go see inside, and Faulkner goes a little bit deep. He can't shut the door. He wasn't able to stop the car in time, and Harikonen, I think, has cleared Faulkner. I think he's finally found a way through. It took him the best part of 6 laps to do it, but he's finally done it, and now the Irishman has got Svensson on the back of him, and will Faulkner be able to hold off Svensson? That will be the next question, and will Harikonen be able to break away? There's a 5-second penalty for Faulkner. Now, what is this for? As we take a quick look at our stewarding screen right now, that penalty, the 5 seconds, is... My apologies, ladies and gentlemen. We are trying to find out right now. It has been confirmed to us. In fact, it's a 10-second penalty, and that is for aggressive driving versus car number 13. And that would be Ben Walker, I believe, although I'm not 100% sure on that. That's number 67 versus car number 4. And as a result, in fact, that is car number 4, and that... Well, Faulkner's definitely got the penalty for whatever's happened right now, but we can see that as they make their way down into turn number 11, we've got Svensson under huge pressure here from Atkinson, and Atkinson on the inside. He's going to be on the outside into turn number 13. Svensson taking that nice defensive line is the American as she gets a little tap on the rear. Oh, goodness me, and Atkinson has been spun, and Gianpetro there, but I think it was the fact that Atkinson clipped the back of Svensson, and then Gianpetro just didn't have time to react, but Gianpetro has now gained the place, but the stewards will be taking a look at that one. But Atkinson has had it happen to him this time on lap number 14. As further back we can see that Crew Camp is being hounded right now by Richard Jepp. They go down to turn 1. We can see Dave Jr. looking for the move on Gianpetro, but he can't find it, but Jepp trying to find the move, and Crew Camp going defensive as they make their way out of turn 1 and head up into turn 2. But there's no change this time, but I definitely think it's the case right now with Faulkner getting that 10-second time penalty which will be applied in the pits, that now the penalties are going to start to take an attritional factor on the racing here as they make their way out of 2 and into 3. But you can see Crew Camp having to keep one eye in his rearview mirror, and he's got 2 eyes in his rearview mirror right now because he'll probably be shocked to see the other Grumpy Monkey machine, albeit carrying a 10-second penalty. It is Ross Bartle in P14 closing up to this as we see Harikonen now got some clear air, and he's starting to pull a little bit away from the hump for P7. Tardioli up ahead, however, has disappeared off into distance 5 seconds away, and Tardioli, I think, will be grateful for the opportunity when he was able to break away the Valkyrie Sport driver, able to now focus on things going through turn 10 as it currently stands. And up front, I can tell you that Field has opened that gap out to 3.7 seconds versus Voss. Voss down in P2, you're looking at Voss right now, our P2 man, and then we've got Zoiga in P3, and Walker and Lefloit have fallen back a little bit over the last couple of laps. The gap has now reopened itself to 1.2 seconds from Walker to Zoiga. We're looking at Walker right now, and then Lefloit behind a further second or so. I think these guys are all calming the racing down a little bit, calming down the pace and focusing more on the stintage, and I think it is those tyre temperatures really kicking in because that track temperature has not changed. It is still 51 degrees centigrade, and these tyres will be absolutely screaming to be put into a water bath as we see Tardioli a bit further back, and then we've got Harikonen right now in that P7, but behind it's Faulkner, and he's got Svensson over the back of him, and indeed Faulkner starting to fall off. Svensson half a second faster than Faulkner on that lap alone. I do think Svensson is going to be looking for a move later on in this lap, if not onto the next lap right now, because the American definitely has some pace as she makes her way out to turn 1 and chases once again. But we take a look to our Twitch chat right now, and we can see that Faulkner pushing through as we say hello to Bill Brooks in the Twitch chat. And as they make their way through the corners once again, we can see that Faulkner's got Svensson all over the back of him, and he's got to try and find a way to hold off the other Ferrari that's in hot pursuit. Further back, we've got GM Petro. Of course, will have a little bit of a cloud hanging over him with regards to the contact with Atkinson. And I think his argument will be that Atkinson essentially slowed very suddenly and GM Petro had no way of avoiding the contact. And I can tell you that with regards to Atkinson, he has got that Bentley recovered. And you're looking at him right now. He's in P14. And we know that Atkinson is the master of the recovery drives. He's had to make more recovery drives than anybody else this season by a huge margin. So we will not be forgetting about Atkinson. I suspect we will see him later in the race as he's actually got past Bartle. I think Bartle's made a mistake somewhere because Bartle has dropped down the order to a degree and has now got Yun closing up to it, and Yun has got past Jesse Monrose, I should point out, and Monrose behind the American driver right now from BSP, sorry, the French driver I should say, not American, from BSP Racing has got an American chasing after him, and that is Brandon Warren in hot pursuit, the VRS Satellite Racing driver here, making his way in pursuit through turn number 10 right now as they come up into 11, and he threw that sweeper once again, all very set and comfy right now. Bit of space between the drivers as well, just giving the chance to manage the racing as we look back up towards our leader, who is definitely controlling this one as it currently stands, coming up behind some traffic, and that is Sylvain Pastoris in P27, the Ferrari just ahead of our race leader, who will be the first to have the blue flags waved through. Now, as we look back to Tardioli right now, putting in some very good laps, Tardioli. That last one, a 46.3 and really strong pace. Not as close to the pace of Lefloic ahead, who is a 3/10 faster on the previous lap. But you can definitely see that the two Valkyrie Esport drives of Lefloic and Tardioli. We're looking at Lefloic right now in P5. Definitely feeling comfortable at this point in the race. And in fact, Lefloic really starting to come on strong versus Walker. And that lap alone, Lefloic took 3/10 out of the McLaren. But we did see this earlier. This is not new in the fact we saw how close Lefloic got to the back of Walker, only then to have to back the car off because the tyre temps and the brakes were suspectedly getting a bit too hot and needed to focus on managing those. And I think that's the issue that Floyd's got to do. He's got to try and find a way, has Marvin, of getting close enough to Walker and getting the move done. And we know how strong Walker is when he puts his foot down in that McLaren. We know he can hold drivers off in the run out of corners on those straights down into sort of heavy braking zones, and Walker does very well in those conditions. It's through these sweepers you can see how Lefloic is able to maintain that tighter apex line, and I think that's what Walker is focusing on here, focusing on trying to essentially get Lefloic to push too hard and therefore take away some of that tyre life, because the pit window is going to open in perhaps the next 7 or 8 minutes, and our drivers will know that it's going to open because we always put the pit window in the middle of the race for this season. But what we can see is that Lefloic is definitely closing up right now but cannot find a way into the space as he makes his way onto another lap. And we look a bit further back and you can see that Faulkner still holding off Svensson here, but that gap is getting tighter and tighter, and GM Petro would love an opportunity to scupper both of them as we jump on board with GM Petro and we get the popcorn view effectively from GM Petro's car as the Frenchman from Valkyrie Sport makes his way onto lap number 18 and is chasing down Svensson and Faulkner, who are both up ahead. Now, will Svensson look for a move this time? As we know, Svensson is now caught up behind Faulkner, so that pace advantage has disappeared. Not the case this time around, and we do actually see that Faulkner gets it very nicely nailed through the corner, and as they come out, you can see, in fact, that Svensson getting a poor run out of turn 1. Will this be an opportunity for GM Petro to go for a move here? He's going to potentially look at it, but he instead waits for it. I mean, he's going to try and put some pressure on Svensson and try and get Svensson to make a mistake, because if he can do that, then he can avoid having to do heavy braking into the corners, and therefore avoid exceeding those brake temperatures and also those tyre temperatures, which are oh so critical, and none more so, of course, than in the Porsche, which is very sensitive to its tyre wear. As we can see, they make their way through turn number 4 here, and as they come up into 5, it's no change. They all follow nose to tail, but GM Petro definitely taking those more aggressive attack lines into turn number 5 there. So I think GM Petro is now trying to go for the move come the end of this lap into lap number 19. It will be the case. As you can see, the stance of GM Petro's car is getting more pointed into the apexes, and that tells you he's now on an aggressive lap. This is more like qualifying effectively, where he's trying to get the car to go around as quickly as possible rather than conserving the car. Crew camp is 4.4 seconds behind these guys, not close enough to really get involved at this point in time, but if they do battle, you can imagine that crew camp will close up probably by about a second a lap as they make their way out of 11 and down towards 12 once again. In the flow down the hill right now, we can see that GM Petro coming through at a turn at number 12, not able to close up very much. In fact, actually going a bit wide out there, and I think just taking a bit too much out of the car through sector 2. But again, he'll be looking for where he can make Svensson make mistakes or put her under pressure. As we see Faulkner making a little bit of a run wide there out of turn 13, and these three still staying in this formation right now. There's no change between them, but you do imagine if just one of them makes a mistake, then the other two will benefit colossally from it, as they all all make their way down towards turn number 1 for the 19th time of asking. No change. And Svensson not close enough this time, nor GM Petro to look at potential moves. But we do see Faulkner goes a little bit deep under braking into turn 1, but gets it parked in the apex very nicely. So as a result, not able to gain his Svensson. But you can see as the pit window finally opens here, and now who is going to be the first of these three to react? And indeed, who of our leaders will be the first to react? As GM Petro gets very close there to the back of Faulkner. As we ride on board looking back here, you can see how GM Petro closed up, but now as they run out of 3 and up towards 4, he falls back a little bit as the Ferrari drivers just get the better run initially through 3. And as they come through 4 once again, GM Petro all over the back of this pair, but he's got to try and time it right. So what he won't want to do is battle Svensson too much as to give Faulkner the ability to run away and potentially come into the pits, because then Faulkner will essentially foretell an undercut on the other 2, and that's the thing they've got to be aware of right now. Who is going to be the first out of these 3 to flinch and go for that all-important pit stop as they all make their way here through turn number 8 and head round into the right-hander of 9. And you can see that GM Petro once again getting very close to the back of Svensson ahead as we look a bit further at the field, and Field pits immediately. Now this is contrary to what we've typically seen from Field. We've normally seen Field go at least halfway into the pit window, but our race leader is into the pits and Voss is staying out. We've had some of the backmarkers such as Gareth Mills and Moreira into the pits as well, but Voss right now has taken the lead, but of course has yet to pit. Now what can Voss do? Has he been saving something up going into the pit window? Has he been waiting to put in some qualifying laps? As we see Zoiga right now making his way down towards turn number 1 in P2 now on track, and you can see that Faulkner and Svensson both in, and I think Svensson right now might be cursing a little bit for the fact that Faulkner has gone for the undercut here. So he's going to dictate the pace of the strategy here and essentially say to him, but do keep in mind Faulkner does have that 10-second penalty, so as a result he will lose the position naturally. But this, with Svensson pitting, means that Svensson will be looking for the undercut on GM Petro, who stayed out another lap here and is in P7 Alton Circuit. Meanwhile, a little bit further back, I can tell you that Yun has also come into the pits, and we've also got Monrose there. A lot of drivers immediately coming in here. I think the tyre wear has been absolutely critical, and it has caused a lot of drivers to have to flinch very early on. As Harry Conan down in P6 as it currently stands, and making his way around is Kevin the Frenchman. After what was a very difficult first stint, he's still on his first stint, do keep in mind, but making his way around the circuit all the same as he comes through at turn number 5. As he comes through the head corner here, I think for Harry Conan we may expect him to go long on this stint, as we hear that Ross Bartle's now got a 25-second penalty here, and the reason for that 25-second penalty, well, it's 2 penalties being compounded, and it's 15 seconds added on to 10 seconds, and I believe that is for, as we just check, for Ross Bartle, who you're seeing here, that's because of aggressive driving and contact with car number 10, and that was contact earlier on in the race with Dave Jr., who's just coming out the pits right now. So that explains why Ross Bartle, and that's why we saw Dave Jr. drop down the order a little bit earlier on our timing screens, and Junior, to give you an idea, is just on his outlap right now, so he's coming. In fact, he's just come out of the pits to repair the car, so he's going into the pits now for his mandated pit stop. So Junior making 2 stops here, the American, and it has been a difficult day at the races. But meanwhile, up front, Voss continuing around and staying out there on his opening stint, as we've got more drivers coming out the pits right now, and we see that's Loisinger making his way out of the pits. A lap down our leaders, down in P19, and behind we've got Velkoski versus, I believe that is Monrose, and you can see that Loisinger's in fact gained low places, and there's contact, and they just squeezed one another too much into turn 1. And Velkoski versus Monrose. I think Monrose just wanted to get things back, wanted to get the place back, but Velkoski has gained, as has Loisinger. In fact, Loisinger has gained in the pit window 2 places on these guys, and Ewan is just a bit further up the road right now. Well, in fact, I say that he's the best part of 14 seconds up the road, but the BMW driver has definitely found a way to clear some of the traffic in terms of the people he's battling with, and it's just by pitting early and doing a short stop. So Loisinger working the strategy to his advantage. As you see Velkoski right now going a bit deep into turn 5, and they have got Monroe trying to catch up to him here, as we've also got the race leaders also coming around the circuit right now, and it will be the case that they'll have the blue flags waving at them, and of course the German would love for the Frenchman behind to get those blue flags as soon as possible to give him some breathing room. But what about, you ask, our race leader when he came into the pits? Well, that's Juez Field, and you're looking at him right here. He's down in P10 because the pit stops are still underway, but he is, in relation to our race leader, a sizable amount of time. And to give you an idea of the lap times, that that last lap, well, that was his out lap, so we don't have an indicative time. But Voss, that last lap of 46.5, we'll keep an eye on what Voss decides to do at the end of this lap. Is he coming in? No, he stays out, so we'll give you a comparator of his current lap versus field when they come round next time. As we see a bit further down the order right now, we do have Lafloic, who is coming in to the pits from P4, so he's going to release himself from chasing Walker and instead go for the undercut. Now, how will Walker, our P3 driver, who's now P2 effectively, with drivers all pitting, Zoiger's into the pits as well, so only Voss and Walker out of our leaders have yet to pit in that top 5 pack. We can see that Walker staying out, as we've got Brandon there. That is Brandon Warren coming out of the pits in P16, now a lap down, but what we know is that Walker is staying long, and I think the idea behind this is that Walker wants to essentially try and get his rival for that position to fall into traffic, and Walker wants to stay out as long as possible to avoid the traffic. We will wait and see, as Voss is still out there as well. And to give you that comparison, Voss that last lap of 46.3, meanwhile US Field, who is coming through the final pair of corners right now, and we're just going to catch what he's going to be putting in on our timing screen as he comes into turn number 14, and as he makes his way through that final corner. What's it going to be? As it gives us a breather and a brief respite as well as he comes out that final corner. It is going to be the time, a 1:45.4, so Voss does need to pit if he wants any chance of holding on to that lead, because right now Field is on a flyer, and it is showing as Walker continues through here, and we'll wait and see. But meanwhile, in the pits, we've got Lafloic coming out the pits, and we see Zoiger there also out the pits. Zoiger still ahead of Lafloic, but that gap roughly about the same as when they entered. The two of them having near identical stops here, and I think it's going to be the case that with the fact that Lafloic was not able to gain that much on Zoiger, in fact, Zoiger's open that gap up very slightly by about 7/10 of a second, and that is essentially Herculean in terms of lap time here. We can see that Lafloic right now will have to do everything to try and catch back up. But these guys, the best part of what is 6 to 8 seconds down on our effective race leader, we suspect, when Field comes out the pits, but we have to wait and see. One driver, however, who is doing that recovery drive right now, as we hear that Ben Walker is in the pits. He's reacting now to Lafloic. We can see that it's Atkinson after Richard Jep, and these two nose to tail here, and Jep going wide out of turn number 11, but they will have to pit, if not on this lap, then definitely on the next lap as they make their way out of the corner. In fact, they have 2 laps to go. We can see that Atkinson really putting the pressure on and doing everything he can to make this another recovery drive. He won't have wanted it this way, but he excels in this situation, and Jep pitting. So the Harman Racing driver comes into the pits from what was P4 out on circuit. Atkinson will take that P4, but remember, these guys are pitting, so they will drop those places. But right now, Atkinson got a clear bit of track out in front of him. He's got Ingo Horman behind, who is in P20 a lap down. He's got Lambrecht ahead of him, 2 laps down in P25. As we see Voss continuing his way around the circuit right now, and that gap between himself and Field is going to be coming down over these laps if neither driver makes a mistake, because Field is on those fresher tyres. But we can see Volker is just coming out of his pit box right now. I believe he's coming out of his pit box, and as he does so here, we can see Harikonen is making his way around. He's yet to pit, but where's everybody else? That's the question. Well, Atkinson's already come through, and as we look down the order, we can see that here's Zoiger making his way across the timing line. So I think Walker's going to be coming out of that pit lane very shortly. Keep an eye on the left hand side of your screen as we pan out here, and you could see that Walker, by pitting later, has jumped Lafloic here, and he's actually gained on Zoiger. So Walker has come back out ahead despite the fact that he pitted later. It didn't work out for Lafloic by going for that early stop. It's actually had the inverse effect. Lafloic has lost time on both, and Walker is now going to be back in that position. And can he get the car switched on and go hunting down Zoiger and pull the gap on Lafloic? And Lafloic, of course, at this point will have warmed up tyres. The tyres will be in their operating window. Walker will need to spend at least 1 lap to get those tyres into the optimum window before the heat really starts to kick in. There's been no change in temperature, either ambient or track temperature, so the tyres will come up very quickly here. But right now, Lafloic will be cursing because he's only just caught up to the back of Walker out of turn number 5, and there's no room to overtake here. And as a result, they're now going to be in that sequence as they come through the corners, and it is a rinse and repeat of what we saw earlier. The fact that Lafloic has been able to get right up the back of Walker, but he's not able to find a way for it, and he's got to do it so quickly as our race leader Voss is into the pits, as is Harikonen here. But you can see how Lafloic's very close to the back. Will he try and move down into turn 12? I think if he's going to do it, he's going to have to do it on this lap, because once Walker is going, as Atkinson also comes into the pits, and Walker knows it's coming. He goes defensive into 12, and LaFlotte tries to go round. He's going to go around the outside. Can he get it done? Oh, there's a bit of contact there, and as a result, LaFlotte has to back out of it. There wasn't the space out on the circuit, and I think there might have also been a very small lag spike there on LaFlotte's end as they make the way out, and LaFlotte goes wide out of 13, and you can see how much Marvin wants to get through it. He can't find a way through. Meanwhile, up front, I can tell you that Voss is coming out the pits, and Field is back up into lead. Here's your race leader, and there's Voss just behind him. The gap about the same as when they pitted, but we come back to that battle for, of course, what is now effectively out on circuit P4. Walker versus LaFlotte as they both make their way down into turn 1 once again, and there's no change for the time being, and our leaders of Field, Voss and Zoiga are all pulling away right now as this is the battle for P4. Further down, however, what I can tell you is that LaFlotte, as he's making his way in, we have got Tardioli down in P6. So once the pit stops are done, Tardioli's still in that P6 position and having a positive run here as he makes his way into turn 2. Then we've got Harikonen in what appears to be a P7 when the pit stop is all said and done. And in fact, he has got into that P7 position, and he's got Pastoris and Hill behind him, who are effectively at least one lap down. And what that means is that after the pit stops, Gian Petro has got up into P8 ahead of Svensson, is 2.5 seconds back. So Gian Petro has gained from the pit window, and it is Atkinson who, after pitting as late as possible, we can see that Jonathan Atkinson is in P11. He's jumped Richard Jepp, in fact, and we've got Faulkner there, Ethan Faulkner, who of course had that 10-second penalty during the pit window to take, and we can see Faulkner's now got a Mercedes and a Bentley to find his way through. Two very different customers from what he was dealing with earlier, and I think this will be a completely different challenge because he'll have to do it in the corners. He won't have the straight line speed versus these two, particularly that AMG Mercedes, which will be a beast down the straights as they all make their way out of turn 5 and up into the chicane of 6 and 7 once again. 32 minutes of this race to go, and who is going to be finishing in that top 10? These guys are of course 9.3 seconds down on Crew Camp, who is in that P10 position right now as they make their way through, but you can see from Faulkner all over the back of Richard Jepp as they make their way out of turn number 9 and into 10 before 11 we go. And as we ride on board here with the Ferrari driver, you can see how close he is to the back, and Jepp and Faulkner both go wide. He's going to look for the move. He's got a drive-through penalty as Faulkner. I'm not sure why that's the case, but he's got a drive-through as he looks to move here, and that is going to absolutely dampen his day, and we will find out for you why that is very shortly, ladies and gentlemen, as it is going to be confirmed for us in due course. We'll give you that update as soon as we possibly can. But Faulkner with a drive-through penalty to only make what has been a good day go from bad to worse tonight when he comes into the pits, and you can see from the posture of the car, Faulkner not happy about how things have gone today as we look back up towards our leaders, and Field 4.8 seconds clear of Voss and continuing to open up that gap. I think Field at this point is now just pacing the gap to Voss. As we can see ahead of him, he has got Gareth Mills, who is a lap down on our race leaders, and as he makes his way, he will be lapped down very shortly when he gets lapped, of course. But Mills in P22 right now. He's had a quiet race, has Gareth Mills, but just continuing around is the South African and doing everything he can to put in a solid result in that Audi and soldiering on. That's what it's all about. And a fan favourite, Gareth Mills, for the fact that whilst he may not be the fastest driver, he seems to be a consistent driver and one who enjoys every moment out on circuit, and you can see that here in the body language of the number 5 car, just smoothly making its way around and moving out the way for our race leader, as Voss will be trying to come through very shortly as well. Now, a bit further up the order, I can tell you that Richard Jepp hunting down Atkinson. Well, with the fact that Faulkner has now disappeared out of this battle, it will be the case that the two front-engine rear-wheel drive cars will be pursuing one another. We can see there Jepp going a bit wide out 7, pushing a bit too hard there, and I think that tells you that Jepp wants to be closer to Atkinson, who is gradually eking the gap out on him. Meanwhile, up front, I can tell you that after all was said and done, all the flight and Walker, there has been a change of position here. We didn't see that on camera, but Walker, the best part of 3.5 seconds down. I think there's been an instant or a mistake from one of these drivers because of the fact that he's just simply disappeared, has Walker. We are checking in with race control at the moment. There's nothing reported at this point in time, as we are hearing that with regards to that drive through a penalty for what was at the time our Ferrari man, the Irishman of... Excuse me, 1 second, folks. It is Ethan Faulkner. Ethan Faulkner. With regards to him picking out a drive-through, we're just trying to get the details as to why the number 67 driver got that drive-through penalty, and it was due to the contact between himself and car number 4. And car number 4 being Julian Lardier. We did see that early on, and that decision has finally come in. So two drivers who've had a very difficult race, and Lardier in the pits, and I think that car has retired from the race. So we have lost 2 drivers. In fact, we've lost 3 drivers over the course of this one. on, and it is the case that right now, in 2 drivers, it's Trippion and Laudier who have retired, but otherwise we've still got 27 drivers out on circuit. The last of our active runners is Sylvain Pastoris, the Swiss driver from AF Corse, just making his way right now in towards the chicane. So 27 out of our starting 29, everybody making their way through right now and continue with 28 minutes of racing to go. And as we look back up front, we see that field holding on as we've got a drive-through penalty. The drama's kicking off here. Lefloy with drive-through penalty, and I think this may explain as to why we've seen Walker drop down the order. And I'm just checking my notes here, folks. It's a drive-through for car 717, and that is for running wide off the circuit. And then as he came back on, forcing himself alongside Ben Walker, the car number 13, and causing the contact. In fact, that's what we saw earlier on camera, I believe. We saw that incident, and Lefloy picking up that drive-through penalty. So Walker comes back up into P4, and he's got behind him, well, that is Dave Jr. that he doesn't have to worry about, because Jr. is a lap down, albeit Jr. would love to clear, but you can see Tardioli behind is closing now on that last lap. Tardioli took 6 tenths out of Walker, albeit I think it may be the case that Jr. was in the way at that point, albeit Jr. may not have been able to get out the way through sector 2. But we can see Tardioli really pushing on right now and trying to get in the hunt for a top 5 finish and perhaps even higher, as we see their Junior moving out the way. And as they make their way through here, can Tardioli hunt down the McLaren and overtake it successfully? We have seen many drivers try to make a move on Walker over the course of this race, but Walker able to make that McLaren so wide through every single corner and just difficult to pass. But will it be the case today that Walker can do it, or will Tardioli have the chance of getting into that P4 position? These guys, of course, the best part of 13 to 14 seconds down Chris Zoiger in P3. Our top 3 have broken away, but it is the case right now. The hunt for P4 is on, and Tardioli is the man who's hunting it down as rapidly as possible. As we see a little bit further down the order right now, Tony Hill in P23 in a bit of a no man's land. Nobody really around him. The next driver he would be chasing after is Gareth Mills, but Gareth Mills is a long way up the circuit by comparison. So as a result, Hill right now just focusing on his own race in P23. And Ross Bartle, it's been a difficult day at the office for him, but right now in the pursuit of P16, and that is Ethan Faulkner ahead of him, who he's chasing down, and he's got Velkoski behind him. And Velkoski, of course, with that incident with Jesse Monrose earlier on, the battle coming out of the pits, the German just holding on versus the Frenchman, but you have to wonder whether there's going to be even more battle in between. And we've still got those 26 minutes of racing to go, and the back to motion driver versus BSP Racing, both of them would love to finish higher up in that top 20. Vilkoski, of course, would love that P18, whereas Monrose would love to snatch it off of him. But both of them will be chasing after Ross Bartle, that I'm sure, as we see them make their way out of the chicane and into turn 8 for what is the 27th time of asking. Bit further down, we've got Dave Jr. in P25 right now, and unfortunately Dave not really chasing after anybody close by right now. The closest driver to him is Sylvain Pastoris, who's in P26 behind him, who is 8 seconds down, but otherwise Jr. having to let a number of drivers through right now, getting the blue flags waved, and as a result he'll have Harikonen coming through, and next, Harikonen being our P6 man, who we're looking at right now. And Harikonen, since the pit stop, now in clearer air and able to focus on the race. And what I can tell you is that the fastest man out on circuit right now, out of our top 10, is Harikonen. That last lap, a 45.1, really pushing the boundaries of that Ferrari is the Intruder Racing Team driver, and doing everything he can in order to try and close up to the back of Tardioli and Walker. We can see Tardioli just coming through the picture there through turn number 7 as they go up into 8, but Harikonen pushing on as they make their way through turn number 8 and turn number 9. You can see Junior moving out the way as best he could there, and Harikonen losing the minimal amount of time as they make their way through 10 and up into 11. And Hugo Gianpetro behind him, P7 right now, where he's got quite similar pace, albeit a lot of our drivers in the top 10 in the high 45s, but it is Harikonen who is setting low 45s and doing so at an alarming pace right now. As Svensson behind on 46.1s, and then Krugkamp on 46.2s. You can see him at the rear of the camera shot, Krugkamp, the South African, and then we've got Marvin the Floik, of course, who is having a difficult one with that drive through penalty, putting him down to P10 and quite a way further back right now. So it has spaced out a little bit the order, but of course this is only natural. But I suspect as we come to the end of this stint, when the tyre temperatures really do start to kick in once again, we will be seeing the order close up, and we will start to see those potential battles kick off. But right now, as we look to our P4 man of Walker, we can tell you that Tardioli is closing up gradually. That last lap, Tardioli took almost 2 tenths out of Walker. The two of them are trading lap times, but it's favour to Tardioli as they come through to, as they come through turn number 2. But you can see that at the rear of the camera shot, we have also got Hungaroring, who's closing up to them very gradually here. And as they make their way out of turn number 3 and in towards turn number 4, it is the case right now that Walker doing everything he can in order to hold on to what would be another very strong finish. And the tide really turning for the McLaren driver. Just missing out on the podium last time, but he would love that shot, of course, this time round at picking up that podium. Well, not that podium position, that top 4 position once again. Unless, of course, any of the drivers up front were to suddenly have a retirement or make a major mistake, then he could be within sight of a podium, but we will wait and see. Of course, it's not over until the checker flags wave and our drivers across the finish line, but to do so, they've got to do another 23 minutes of racing at the very tricky, sticky and hot Hungarian circuit, the Hungaroring. But right now, in terms of what I think will be going through our drivers' heads, indeed up and down the field, is that focus on a lap time. I say lap time, we can see Ross Bartel here getting very close to the back of Faulkner here as he goes a little bit wide out of turn 4, and Loisinger now is inching closer. The BMW drivers trying to find a way in, and just off the back of these guys, I should point out Velkovsky and Monrose are getting ever closer. As we can see, that is Brandon Warren at the head of this pack, so Brandon Warren in P14 right now, and it's the consistency of the American driver in that Ferrari that's really benefiting him and getting him well up inside the top 20, but he does need to hold on, and I think it's going to be the case that right now Faulkner's going to do everything he can to try and close up through sector 2 and go for the move into turn 1. As we can see here, they both make their way through turn number 11 once again, and in the rundown towards 12, is Faulkner going to look for the move? No, not currently. He stays in behind right now, but you can see he's inching ever closer to the back of Warren here as they come out of 12 and head up into 13. Into left-hander they go, and Faulkner once again gets in very close, inching closer under braking with every single braking point. And into 14 they go, and now Faulkner I think is going to stay as wide as possible here. In fact, no, he's going to take an aggressive line into the apex here, and this may actually cost him a bit of acceleration out the corner if Warren gets this hooked out, and you can see how much it's cost him in the fact he's dropping back on the acceleration, and he may be exposed here to a potential move from Bartel. Will Faulkner as they make their way into towards turn number 1. Are we going to see a move from Bartel? No, he tucks in behind to no change. As we see, he goes a bit deep on the brakes there, and as a result, Faulkner almost clips the back of Warren, but steers out the way at the last minute, and Bartel almost followed him through as we see Loisinger chasing after the back of this pack right now. The Dream Pace Racing driver here on the back of this pack of 4 cars as they all make their way through turn number 2, and we can see at back there we've got Velkovsky and Monroe separated by Delcom, who's a lap down right now. Delcom flashed his lights I think to try to say I'm faster than you, let me unlap myself, but as they make their way up the hill in towards turn number 4 once again, and we're not seeing any attempted moves here, but Bartel looking very strong versus the back of Faulkner right now, getting so close. You have to imagine that if Faulkner's not able to find a way past Warren, then Bartel is going to send it versus Faulkner, and that is going to be a spectacle to see as we jump on board here inside the Bentley of Bartel, and you can imagine that the South African driver right now is literally trying to find just one little sniff of a mistake from Faulkner and to capitalise on it as they both make their way through turn number 9 and head round towards turn number 10 once again, and Loising has fallen back a little bit at this point in time. As they go into turn number 11 here, you can see how condensed they are behind Warren, who is doing everything right now to hold them off. As they come down to break into turn number 12 for another time, we can see how Warren getting the better run out the corner, and in fact Faulkner there having to resort to running a little bit wide to get the better run in the end versus Bartel. But as they come through at 13 and then into the right-hander at 14 very shortly, it's going to be that run down towards turn number 1, and we're going to stay on board with Bartel as they come through that right-hander and build up the throttle, and the Grumpy Monkey machine, will it get its grump on or will it stay placid? We see as they make their way then across that timeline, he's as close as he's ever been, Bartel, but he's not quite got the acceleration here as he's tucked in behind right now. Will he swing for a move or will he stay in behind? He stays in behind once again, and we do see that Warren goes a little bit deep, as does Faulkner. They all go deep minus Bartel, and Loisinger behind the 2 Ferraris nose to tail here, and Warren under huge pressure as he goes defensive. Lafloic with another drive-through penalty. We'll talk more about that in a minute, but Warren in P14 right now as they come through turn number 2 and into 3 they sweep, and as they do here, Warren doing everything right now to hold on to P14, but for how long will it be the case that Faulkner's required to stay there? Will Bartel find a way through? It is going to be an absolute climax between these guys, and I'm sure it's going to build up to a point, and then there will be a breaking point and somebody is going to miss it as they come out of turn number 5, and you can see the chicane lies ahead right now and they bunch up once again. But meanwhile for Lafloig, as to confirm as to why he's got that additional drive-through penalty, we are waiting for confirmation on that right now for you folks. We will tell you as soon as we get it. But up front, and meanwhile, we will just wait until they come through at turns 12 and 11. Sorry, 11 and 12. Once again, they can't do the quarters backwards. We don't do Hungary in reverse here. Get my numbers mixed up. But we can see that Warren getting a very slow run there out of 11. And Faulkner just behind it. You can see how defensive Warren's got to go here. He knows that Faulkner's got so much momentum as Lafloig is into the pits for his drive-through penalty, and he'll be coming out in amongst these guys, if not behind them. And you see that Bartel trying to go around the outside, he couldn't quite get it, and has to go a little bit deep and open up the steering there. There wasn't the space to, but Bartel, his patience is starting to wear out a little bit, and as they make their way out of turn number 40, I can tell you Lafloig has actually come out ahead of these guys. He's already out of the pit, so he won't be in this battle, but you can see how Loisinger is close in behind, and we've also got Delcon catching up to the back of him, albeit Delcon's a lap down, but would love to see a load of cars here, and he could factor into this if he's trying to siphon his way in. But note how Brandon Warren doing everything he needs to right now to hold off Faulkner here, and Faulkner's having to worry more now about Bartel, I'd argue, if he can nail it each and every time. But meanwhile, Lafloig has come down in P13, and we see that Yun in P12 right now. He's got an 8-second gap to Lafloig, and he's got 4.5 seconds to chase down on Richard Jepp ahead of him, as he's got Tony Hill just ahead of him as well, as they make their way through the chicane once again. Now up front, I can tell you that Field is 4 seconds ahead, but Field is now starting to be reeled in a little bit by Voss here. Last time around, Voss was faster by 200ths. The gap has come down from 5 seconds to 4 seconds over the last 4 laps, and I think Field might be controlling this one a little bit. Zoiga, meanwhile, in P3, he's got a nice gap to Walker. He's got an 11.5 second gap to Walker. He doesn't have to worry about the McLaren driver behind him, but further back, Harikonen has passed Tardioli, so I can tell you that's happened off camera. Harikonen versus Tardioli. Tardioli has lost the position, and Harikonen up into P5 and is chasing down Walker. He's taking 2 tenths a lap out of Ben Walker as they make their way into turn 2 once again. But further back from these guys right now, it is Krewkamp who's in that P9 position trying to hunt down Mir Svensson. Svensson only a second up the road, and then we've got Atkinson further back who's recovered to P10 and is continuing this recovery drive right now as Atkinson. He's got himself back up into the top 10, and then even further back we can see we've got Yun here in P13 as he makes his way into turn 1. But coming back to that battle for P14, we can see that Bartel has got ahead of Faulkner here. Now I believe that Faulkner was passed into a turn at number 12, as we know behind that Loisinger has just let Delcon through, so Delcon trying to find his way into all this, and Loisinger tucking in behind. But Faulkner has been passed by Bartel, and Bartel now on his way to attack Brandon Warren here as they make their way down in towards turn number 1. And as they do, you can see that Faulkner having to keep one eye on Delcon trying to come back up through the field here, as we are shortly getting confirmation with regards to that drive-through penalty, I believe, for Lafloig. But right now, Faulkner in that position, an awkward one where he's got to try and stay close to Bartel to give himself the opportunity to capitalise when Bartel goes to move on Warren. But Warren is pulling away a little bit this time. I think he's just had the pressure taken off him and doesn't have to worry as much anymore. As we look back up to our battle for P4 as it's building, 2 seconds is the gap between this man in P5, Harikonen, and Walku's just ahead of him, and Tardioli a second behind Harikonen, as all three of them go across our timeline onto lap number 34. No change at the moment. They're all looking competitive, as Walker has lost another 3 attempts. Harikonen taking that time out of him on that lap, and Tardioli practically matching Walker's time but losing 2 attempts to Harikonen. So Harikonen definitely the fastest right now out of our top drivers, our top 10. It's Harikonen who is the man on a mission to get himself further up that order. But to do so, the first driver he's got to overcome is this man right here, Ben Walker, the distinct GG driver, who is doing everything he needs to right now to bring home that P4, and we know he can defend it very well when he's under pressure. But we can see here Ross Bartel, meanwhile, in that battle for P14. He's getting ever closer to the back of Brandon Warren. He looks to the cut back into turn 13. And you can see he goes wide to go tight. And as they come out the corner here, I think Brandon Warren is going to have something to worry about as the Grumpy Monkey machine lines up the exit out of turn 14. It goes a bit deep, but that means he gets the better nose-in angle come the exit. He takes a late apex, and he does get the momentum. Now, will it be enough for Bartel? Can he get it done under braking into turn 1 this time? You can see Warren going defensive initially, and Bartle cuts the inside, he sweeps back, he throws the dummy, but it's not enough, as it looks as though Warren, in fact Warren does go a little bit deep, and Bartle with the dummy is now side by side coming out of 1 and heading up to 2, but as they make their way in towards turn 2, you can see it's Warren on the inside, Ferrari versus Bentley on the outside. As they make their way into the corner, Warren brakes a little bit early, he locks up the brakes, as does Bartle. They both come through the corner into 3, they both got to go to the right, and there's contact between them as neither driver wanted to yield there, and Bartle is able to hold on, but in return Warren loses 2 positions there, as we can see that he's now dropped down to P16. And I think the question from both of them is, why didn't the other guy give way? Well, I think for Warren right now, he might be thinking to himself after this one, should I have just lifted off the throttle a little bit and held onto P15 for the time being? We'll wait for our stewards, of course, to determine that, as we see Bartle gets it wrong on the chicane there of turns 6 and 7, going a bit wide and cutting the apex. That will be a track limits warning, and if he picks up too many of those, of course, he will be subject to a time penalty, as we see that right now. Fulton are now back in the hunting position here, and Warren, by comparison, he does have Loisinger chasing after him, but through sector 2, Loisinger, who will look very fast on the straights, will look rather tame by comparison, but Loisinger doing very well to stay right in at half a second of the Ferrari ahead of him, making that BMW work as much as possible and to force the car through the corners, I reckon. And with 12.5 minutes to go, you can see that Warren right now not in a happy place after that small incident. A small bit of contact has caused him to lose that momentum in P14, and now he's got to do it all again, and he will be vulnerable as we jump on board here with Loisinger making his way out of the final corner, and he's going to have the slipstream, and he's also going to have that straight line acceleration, but gets some snap oversteer, and that costs him a huge amount of momentum as he charges after Warren at the front of the window there. You can see just in the windshield as they come down to the braking zone for turn number 1, and that opportunity cost once again, as Loisinger has to find a way to keep close in behind Warren over the course of the lap, but it's such a difficult task as they make their way through the corners. Now, meanwhile, up front, I can tell you that Field is still leading, and he has got a gap of 3.8 seconds. So Field is controlling the gap to Voss right now. On that last lap, Voss took 3 tenths out of him, but it's been the case that the lap times have been oscillating between these two. The big question is Zoiger. What about him? Well, again, 11 seconds ahead of Walker, but he's not close enough to challenge Voss right now. I think the second CHF Motorsport driver is bringing home that P3, or that's his target, but it's Walker versus Harrakonen. That is the big question, as Tardioli has fallen off of these guys a little bit more. 3 seconds back is Tardioli, as we can see that Harrakonen is inching closer lap after lap. That last lap, Walker at 46.2, Harrakonen at 45.9, as they both make their way through the camera through turn 2 there, and you can definitely see that they are getting closer and closer to one another, and Harrakonen is the one who wants to make it happen as they make their way out of 3 and up the hill towards 4 right now. And I can imagine that from Harrakonen's perspective, now that he's going to have roughly 10 minutes to go when he gets close enough to start looking at that move, he's going to be thinking, right, where can I get it done versus Walker? Walker's going to defend it in all the common spots. I've got to find somewhere unconventional to do it, or get Walker to make a serious error. And I think right now it may be the case that Harrakonen may look for an attempt into turn number 2. That might be a place to do it, or in the run up to 4, but otherwise he's going to have to just try and catch Walker out as they make their way through turn number 9 and head into 10 and 11. 10 here, and then it'll be 11 the right hander very shortly. You can see how Harrakonen, the body language of the car is telling, and it is saying, I want that P4 as much as possible, as he's taken another 3 tenths out of Walker through sector 2. And as they come down in towards turn number 12 here, you can see the aggression is building. He's pointing that car in as Walker goes a little bit deep out turn 12, but I think he's simply trying to massage the brakes as much as possible for a battle on the brakes into turn 1 here. He knows what's coming, does Walker, as they make their way out of 13 and head round into 14. And as they come through that right hander, you can see Harrakonen making its way through the corner here, and as they come out, it will be the case. Exiting the corner, Walker goes a little bit wide, and Harrakonen will have the run here. Is he going to be able to? He flashes lights to try and distract the McLaren driver ahead of him, and he snaps out. He looks to the inside here, but he's not close enough. He won't be able to do it as a lunge on the brakes there. That would be a disaster to lunge it from that distance back, but you can see how Walker just able to get the run out of the final corner and enabling himself to stay ahead for the time being. Harrakonen's got to be inventive with how he's going to get that place. GM Petro, meanwhile, in P7, a quiet P7 for the Valkyrie Sport driver, chasing down his fellow Valkyrie Sport driver of Tardioli. The gap has come down to 2.6 seconds. Tardioli losing 2.5 tenths of a second on that lap alone, that last lap being lap number 36. But I think it's the case right now, if they do close up, they may settle in formation or they may trade places, but I don't expect any dramatics between these two because it has been a rough race. You can see the front of GM Petro's Porsche there, a little bit mangled, and I think right now he'd be very happy with a P7 and to see his teammate just finish one ahead of him. Of course, you want to be the lead guy out of the team, but I think they'll be happy with a good pair of results today. Of course, they're racing only for themselves in the championship, but it's always good for the team to bring home a good pair of results, as we see that Harikonen right now all over the back of Walker through Sector 2, and this is where he's stronger. We know that Walker isn't quite as strong as the Ferrari in that McLaren as he comes through Sector 2. On the exit of turn number 11 there, you can see Walker going wide. Once again, a lot of drives. In fact, that's Tardioli going extremely wide there, and I think with only 9 minutes to go, now those tyre temperatures are going to be in the critical zone, and those who've not been protecting the tyres will be in that horrific position as they make their way through the corners. And we hear there from Billbooks in the Twitch chat, here for the ending. It's great to have you here, Billbooks, and indeed supporting Harikonen all the way through, as we can also see Yeezy TV from the YouTube channel supporting the Valkyrie Esports drivers. We're focusing on the Intruder Racing team, guys, right now. We can see that Harikonen once again in that familiar position where he's in the toe, but he hasn't got the straight line speed down into turn 1 here. The McLaren does, and as they both go into the brake zone, he's got to find a way to close up. He needs to be close, and this is too far back to try and do it into 1 or 2 right now unless Walker makes a mistake. And then Tardioli and GM Petro. Well, here's Tardioli, there's GM Petro behind him, and these two now separated by 2 seconds. That mistake from Tardioli definitely cost him, but I think Harikonen's found a way because he's getting closer as we ride on board here with the P5 man of Harikonen making his way out to turn 3 and heading up the hill towards turn 4 once again, but he falls back, and we're going to stay with him for the rest of this sector 2 to give you an idea of how much he closes up and the difference in the two cars. And watching turn 5 here, you'll see it all start where you have to note that Walker has to take a wider entry line there because the car won't swing through the corner, whereas it's a swifter approach there for Harikonen by comparison, where you can just rotate the car in more easily. As they come through the chicane, however, you can see Walker can open up that gap a little bit more there, just has a bit more clout in the car as he comes over the chicane, and then through 8 they go into the right hander of 9, and again it's telling here, you can see how Walker's actually understeering a little bit, but as they make their way through 9 and into 10, this is where he opens up once again. It's these acceleration zones before the sweepers where Walker's able to open the gap, and indeed that McLaren very strong in the acceleration, and Harikonen has fallen back a little bit as a result so far, but as they now come through 12 and in towards 13, he'll close up once again as they both run into left-hander of 13 now and heavy down on the brakes, and you can see Walker a little bit wide of apex there versus Harikonen as they come up into the final corner. I think it is the case that Harikonen has lost a little bit of time this time around, and there won't be any major change between the two of them as that gap has opened up very slightly. It's now up to half a second rather than 3/10 of a second, but the two of them are trading lap times, and Harikonen only losing out a tenth on that lap in terms of the overall lap time set. A bit further down the order though, we've got Yun here in P12, Niels Yun, who's in a quiet place of his own, chasing after Richard Jep, who's 14.5 seconds up the road, in fact 15 seconds up the road, and it's the case that not too much happening for him right now as we look a little bit further back up, and we can see here, in fact I think Harikonen again getting very close here, and as we look back here, it's a good time we look back because Harikonen is now all over the back of Walker, and this is the closest he's been. Now will Harikonen try something dicey here up into 4 because he is all over the back of Walker, and this is where he needs to be. He needs to be this close come the end of sector 2, and it's telling. You can see how he's right on the back of Walker right now, and what he's trying to do to Walker is say to him, you even dare come off that defensive line, I'm going to be on the inside here. And he looks at it potentially into the chicane, he can't quite find it, and as a result he cost himself the line. But note how Harikonen is still really close, and that gap is the closest it's been on the first half of sector 2 for a good number of laps, and Harikonen pushing right now to limit. And I think if he pushes any harder, those tyres are going to go, but it is the case he's doing everything. He knows he hasn't got long left. He's got 5 minutes to try and get this done. That's the equivalent of 3 laps at most, and he wants to be there. He can get Walker into that position. If he can get Walker to make even the slightest mistake now, he's there to capitalise on it. And as they both make their way out of 12, 2 very different lines between the drivers, and as they make their way through turn number 13, they come out of the corner once again here, and there's no change between the two of them, but you can see how Harikonen at 3 attempts, he's tucked in very nice behind 4 attempts as they go go through the apex here. And again, I think it's a story of Harikonen just losing out, but he does get a good run this time out of turn number 14. He is close. He is tucked in here. He won't gain enough to be able to go for the move. If he's going to do it, it's going to be a lunge. And you can see Walker going defensive. He pulls into the centre of the road here. And Walker knows that Harikonen would love to try and send it. He looks at the cutback there, but Walker parks it on the apex. And Walker will literally drive that car like it's a lorry or a bus in order to stop the other cars going through right now. We have seen it time and time again. He just knows where to make it awkward for anybody who's trying to overtake. And Walker right now doing everything he needs to as he goes into turn number 3. And Harikonen's got to try it once again to close up and find a way through as they make their way up into turn number 4. No change once again, but it is definitely the case that Harikonen is looking very aggressive as he's right there in the rear view mirror of Walker as they come through the corner. And as we look at Walker and we look back from his car right now, you can see into the chicane they go once again. The Harikonen trying to throw these little dummy moves here into the chicane, trying to get in the head of Walker, trying to make Walker think he's going to go for a move where it's not to be expected as they come through turn 8 and they head down into turn 9. And you can see how Walker just going a little bit wide of apex there, and it's all telling. Walker is on the limit right now, with Harikonen literally being the biggest bugbear and nuisance, the biggest pain in the neck they could ask for as they make their way through turn 9 and head into turn 10 very shortly. Well, in fact, they're coming down the hill right now into turn number 12, getting our numbers a little bit mixed up there as they come through 12 though. You can see Harikonen is still there as Walker goes a bit wide, and the car, the language, is literally on the limit as Walker as they come through 13, and as they come out of the left-hander and head up towards 14, it is the case, tucked in so tight behind right now that Harikonen's got to get around. You can see Harikonen's gone for a wide line, he's going for a late apex of 14. He wants to try and get the sling out of the corner of the slingshot, but it's not enough once again as they both charge down towards turn number 1. He's a bit further back this time is Harikonen, only by literally hundredths of a second, but every thousandth counts, and there's no way in right now. Now, can Walker settle the car into the corner? 3 minutes to go as they both make their way through. Meanwhile, as we look away from this very briefly after they come through turn 2, ladies and gentlemen, because we do need to take a look at some of the other drivers on circuit, I'm afraid, as they come through turn 2, no change this time. We see our race leader, the gap between himself and Voss. Field is leading right now by 3.5 seconds, and Zoiga is comfortably ahead of Walker by 10 seconds. That gap has come down a little bit. I think Zoiga's just cooling the car down right now. Tardioli and Gianpetro, they're separated by a second. They are gradually closing up. We'll keep our eyes on that. And it's Svensson versus Atkinson. Atkinson in P9 and is chasing after, of course. And Svensson getting a little bit of an understeer moment there, coming out of turn number 2. And I think that Ferrari's going to be vulnerable come the final lap as Atkinson is doing that recovery drive that he does love to do. And we can see coming into turn 4, and he's making his way and hunting down P8 right at the end. Crew camp just behind these guys, only a further 3 seconds down the road. We saw him briefly come through the camera, and you'll see him at the rear of the camera shot as they make their way out of turn 5 here and pushing their way in towards the chicane once again. But these are really the closest battles on circuit with regards to our top 15 drivers right now, as things have spaced out a little bit further down the order, and there's no other major battles to report. But coming back to the battle between Walker and Harikonen right now, the closest out on circuit, I can tell you that Walker under that increasing pressure, and Harikonen doing anything he can to try and get closer. He would love to grab onto the rear spoiler, I'm sure, or in fact the rear wing of Walker's car and pull himself along with it, and he's got to try and get as close as possible to do so. As you see, he runs so wide out the final corner. Harikonen, he's got to be wary of those track limits penalties he could be subject to if he continues to do that. But as they make their way down towards turn number 1, once again, he's not close enough. As we see Tardioli versus Gianpetro here. Gianpetro getting closer to the back of the Ferrari driver, who went briefly defensive across the timeline. I think sending the message to his teammate here, look Gianpetro, I might be slower than you, but Ugo, I'm not going to just let you through. You're going to have to fight for this one a little bit, but let's try not to take one out. I think that'll be the message, and indeed the team manager will probably be saying in their ear right now, you can fight lads, just don't take one another out. This is a good result and we need to bring this home for the team as they make their way through turn number 3. And we can see, meanwhile, Walker versus Harikonen once again as they come through turn number 4, flying through it, no change. Oh, and there was contact, there was major contact. It's just a tiny tap, but it's so major, and as a result they both park up there, and oh goodness me, and you can see that Tardioli and Gianpetro come through. Goodness me, and well, that's courtesy from Harikonen to park the car with the contact, and they go racing once again, but they've both lost 2 positions, as we can see right now, making his way through the final pair of corners. It's going to be, I believe this will be the final lap. It'll be a 42nd lap as Fulton has picked up another drive-through penalty. It will be Field who brings home the win at the Hungaroring by, in the end, 3 seconds ahead of Mathis Voss. Voss bringing up a brilliant P2 once again, and as he makes his way through the final corner, it will be the other CHF Motorsport driver of Chris Zeuger from Switzerland who comes home P3. A brilliant effort from Zeuger coming home there on the bottom step of the podium. And in the battle of Tardioli versus Gianpetro, I think it is going to be Tardioli who just holds off Gianpetro for a surprise P4, P5 finish of the pair of them after the incident between Walker and Harakona as they both come out of the final corner. It's Tardioli P4, Gianpetro P5, and then Walker, he's done it in the end. P6, he's held on. He would have wanted that P4, of course, but he's held off Harakkonen. Harakkonen being courteous and giving the place back for P7. Svensson holding off Atkinson in the end for P8. A brilliant effort by Mia Svensson. Atkinson recovering to P9, and Krewkamp bringing home a top 10 finish. The one grumpy monkey to do so today, as Richard Jepp, the Harwin Racing driver, makes his way out of the final corner, and it will be P11 for Richard Jepp. A brilliant effort from the Harwin Racing machine. Top 10 not on the cars today, but he'll still be very happy with that one. And then we've got Nielsen just missing out on the top 10 by a couple of places, but the Vatizanen Racing driver from the Netherlands, I think he'll be very proud of this effort and the fact he was able to stay out on the majority of the trouble as he comes through the final corner. You can see just eking the car around. No more push here, and as he makes his way across the line, a P12 for Yun, P13 for Lefloic. And Ross Bartle having a bad day at the office, as has Lee Flowick with a P14. And then P15 in the end is going to go to Brandon Warren. It wasn't to be today in terms of coming home in P14, but a brilliant effort from the American driver. He's finished the race and he will come home in a top 15 position, and he will be proud that with the VRS Satellite Racing driver. That is our top 15, ladies and gentlemen. Brilliant racing all the way up and down the field, but as you can see, all of our drivers making their way around right now. Field once again leading this race from start to finish, excluding the laps on the pit stop, and really showing why he is the championship leader and the favourite to win this championship by a margin now. Voss, however, did everything he could, and you can see Voss tucked in behind there trying to send a message to Phil to say, look, you may have been the winner, but I'm always behind you. I want to be the guy always there, and I don't want Zeuger to be the one who finishes with you. And Zeuger at P3 there as the three of them go through the final set of quarters, all showing one another great respect. And indeed, a bit further down, you can see Tardioli and Gianpetro come along side by side here. Very pleased jointly, I think, the Valkyrie Esport drivers of their results. And I can see a number of you in the YouTube chat, particularly Yeezy TV there for Valkyrie Esport, very happy with the result of the two drivers. But indeed, looking back up front, our winner today, and he will be very happy with another win. It's Field, and yes, at this point I think he's only thinking to himself right now he's only got a little bit more work to do, and he's got this sealed up in the final 2 rounds. But we'll be back, ladies and gentlemen, in a couple of minutes with the post-race podium interviews. You don't want to miss them. We'll be hearing from our top 3 drivers. Alrighty folks, well we are back, and without further ado, let's get our race winner, here's Field, into the interview room. We're just going to pull him in now, and well, we'll get to hear from our race winner. Hello Fez.
Hello.
Once again, congratulations on another win, and this time at the Hungaroring. How does it feel to win at what some drivers were calling a Monaco without barriers?
Yeah, it feels great. It was quite a difficult race because, yeah, the temperatures were quite hot. So, yeah, it feels so great. What a race.
Indeed, and we saw that in qualifying you seemed to really nail qualifying this time. In the end, grabbing pole by what was at first 0.003 of a second and then finding an extra tenth right at the end. Just take us through qualifying.
Yeah, I knew the space haven't much space on the track, so I wanted to go at one of the first on track, so I had enough space for a clean qualifying lap. And yeah, I really like this track, so yeah, it was just pushing, and it turned out to be a very nice lap.
Oh, that's brilliant. And then going into the race, was the focus just to break away as soon as possible at the start?
Yeah, kind of. I just wasn't quite sure how the tires are able to survive this thing, so yeah, I wanted to push a little bit, but not too much because of the tires.
So with regards to tyres, for our viewers at home, we were talking about the fact the temperatures were going to make tyre management actually really critical. But just take us through from the driver's perspective what that means when you're having to deal with 51 degrees centigrade track temperature.
Well, the temperature wasn't that much of a problem. I was getting used to it because of the previous races were parts 2. It was just a bit annoying to drive, but yeah, just don't overdrive the front axle, and yeah, keep it clean is the main focus for hot races.
I see. And then when you came into the pits a bit later than when you came into the pits, what we saw there, I think it was the fact that Voss tried to go a little bit longer by comparison, but it didn't quite work out in the end, particularly in that second stint.
Yeah, I saw him. He pitted quite late, so I knew the fact that he had much better tires in the end. But I was hoping he pushed so much so the tires won't last until the end, and it worked out pretty fine. I was quite struggling the last 5 laps or so, but yeah, worked quite good.
Definitely, and I think really the big question now is, with the fact that you're able to command the lead through the race, what can we expect from yourself at the Nürburgring? Because 2 more races to go, you've been dominant form, and you only seem to be getting stronger now, particularly now you've got your qualifying nailed down.
Yeah, to say so, the Nürburgring is my favorite track by far. I'm quite excited for that, and I'm hoping for a good race, a lot of action, not that much heat in the tires would be great for the racing, and yeah, we'll see.
And I think one last question we do have, so looking forward to what you're able to achieve at the Nürburgring. Just take us through the fact that you selected the Porsche going into this season. We've really seen you bring the Porsche to life, and indeed yourself, Voss and Zoiga have all made that Porsche work. What's the secret with the car? It just seems so strong.
Yeah, 1 year ago or 1.5 years ago I was driving the Audi, but I just fell in love with Porsche. I don't know why. I just loved the 6-cylinder, and I found out the car drives very well, and you have so much options in the setup, so you can really individualize the setup for yourself, and yeah, high downforce is the key.
Oh, definitely. We can see that in the language of your car when you're going through the corners, in particular, just how much speed you're carrying. And I do wonder, will the high downforce be the route to success at the Nürburgring?
Yeah, we'll see. Will be a great race, I think. And yeah, see you next week.
Well, thank you very much for joining us in the interview room, but congratulations on the win once again, and really building up that building up that momentum, and we look forward to seeing what you're able to achieve at the German circuit in a week's time.
Yeah, thank you, and see ya.
All the best. So you can hear from Jez there, very happy with the performance once again, and really enjoying the Porsche, really making it work. And it really, you can see when a driver is enjoying the car, it's almost as if they're within harmony with one another. And to be fair, our top three, all Porsche drivers, and all three of them really enjoying the car, but Field in particular just making the car glide through the corners. On that high downforce setup he's running, there's got to be some secrets in there, because it's definitely working out. Now, with regards to our P2 finisher of Mathis Voss, whilst he's not able to be interviewed today, he has dropped me some thoughts that he would like me to relay on, and a very well-earned second place to Mathis Voss, and I've informed him of a brilliant performance by him. And what he had to say was that it was an amazing race today, although the heat of the track literally made his tyres crack, and he had to really focus on the fact that with the longer first stint, he wanted to come back strong in the second. That's why he decided to overcut rather than undercut, but he wasn't able to stay close enough to Field over the course of the first stint in particular. That gap of what was approximately 4 seconds come the end of the first stint, he wasn't able to close that gap down, and we saw that gap actually open up to 5 seconds at the start of the second stint, and then he did bring it down a little bit, but he just was not able to close that gap down enough. And as a result, he said well done to Vez Field, and he will look to come back stronger at the Nürburgring. But that is words from Mathis Voss there. Very happy with another second place, and indeed really starting to pick up that form. And if he's not the one on course for the potential win, then he's definitely up there on the podium right now. He's got the qualifying package and he's got that race package, and it's definitely showing. The Intruder Racing Team driver trying to take the fight to the CHF Motorsport driver, and there's going to be plenty more of that, I'm sure, going into round number 7 in a week's time. But now it's time for us to have our interview with our third place man, Chris Zoiger, another CHF Motorsport Racing driver. And we're just going to let him know that we're going to be pulling him in to the interview room. Hello, Chris.
Hi.
So firstly, Chris, congratulations on another podium finish, P3 today at the Hungaroring. How does it feel?
It's amazing, really. Thank you very much. It was a good race. It was a bit boring for me, but it was really good, and I didn't think I would be able to stick it on the podium this time.
So tell us a little bit about qualifying, because qualifying didn't quite work out for you. You actually qualified quite a way down in the top 10, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I qualified 6th, and it was a really bad qualifying for me. I just hadn't gotten the tire pressures right and really struggled with the tires. So yeah, I got 6th, and it really wasn't a good qualifying. And then I just had an amazing start. I gained 3 positions, I think, and ended in 3rd, like after the second corner. So yeah, it was a good start, but not a very good qualifying for me.
So just with regards to that start, because that was a phenomenal start, and we didn't quite catch it on camera, but we saw you go from P6, you just seemed to come out of nowhere, and P3 by the end of the second corner. How did you make it happen?
I was really surprised myself. I don't quite know how I managed to stick it, but I think I just got off the line a little bit better as the person in front of me, and so I managed to go besides him, and I think there actually was 3 wides there, and then I just got it around the outside and was on the inside into turn 2, which then had the 3rd place needed to pull back, which then in result ended me in P3, which was very nice. Yeah.
So then, coming away from a brilliant start for yourself, in the first stint, was the focus on just trying to break away or perhaps chase down the leaders? Because we saw that you started to gradually fall off the back of Vosov and Field, but at the same time you seemed to be in a bit of a world of your own. You weren't quite fast enough to challenge for the lead, but you were faster than the chasing pack.
Yeah, in the beginning I tried really to chase down Voss, but then soon I realized I just wasn't really quick enough, and then I just tried to save a little bit of tires and pull away from P4, which I managed a bit, but the gap just stayed more or less the same. And then in the second stint I think they had a crash, so which on the result I really got even more space to P4. And yeah, P2 and P1 were just fast enough, too fast for me this race.
And with regards to that second stint, particularly with the instant, as you saw from your perspective, when you saw that the guys battling for P4 had the instant, was it a case that you could just back off the throttle a little bit, or was it still a case of pushing all the way to the end?
No, I really was relieved that, like, I kind of was afraid the whole race that they would catch me. But then as soon as I realized that they had crashed and the gap was like 11 seconds or something, I just got away off the throttle a bit and just relaxed and tried to bring it home in third place, which I then managed to do, yeah.
Well, it was a brilliant effort from yourself, and that makes it 2 podiums back to back. Can we expect a potential third podium next time out the Nürburgring?
I hope so. As well as, for me, the Nürburgring is one of my favorite tracks, and I think I'm quite strong there, so I really will try to stick it in at least second place or third place, but yeah, you never know. I think the other guys are quite strong there too, and just hope that it's not as hot as this was here, and yeah, let's see.
Well, we look forward to seeing what you can achieve, and with only 2 rounds to go now, have you got your sights set on anywhere in the championship in particular? Because going into tonight's round, you were in P11 in the championship. Are we looking for a top 5 come the end of the season?
Yeah, I really hope so. I mean, after the first race, my aim was actually to achieve top 3, but then the second and the first race were just really bad, and I didn't even manage to attend the 4th race. So now I think I'm just trying to do my best there and catch top 5 or even more, but I don't think it's possible, but let's see, maybe.
Well, we will definitely wait and see with bated breath, but congratulations once again on P3 today, a brilliant result, and we look forward to seeing you out on track next week.
Thank you very much, have a nice evening.
You too. So as you heard there from Chris Euger, very happy with the performance today, relieved in a way with the amount of battling behind him for P4 and further back. Particularly we saw that huge train of cars battling for P6, and you can only imagine if that train hadn't formed and perhaps had all been hunting down the top 3. Can you imagine how that train would have got in there? But sometimes that's what it's all about, and Zoiga got it done when it mattered into turn 2 on lap number 1, gaining 3 places from a starting position of P6. A brilliant result, and with a start like that, you can only imagine if he qualifies a little bit further up the order, could he perhaps be battling for the win, or at least making it another 1-2 as part of CHF Motorsport alongside his teammate Field, who took the win today, of course. But that just about wraps it up for today's round number 6 of the Hungaroring. Thank you very much for watching, ladies and gentlemen. If you do want to know more about the NXTGEN Racing community, why not check us out on the official NXTGEN Racing website, that's nextgenracing.co.uk, or check us out on our official Facebook group, that's facebook.com groups NXTGEN Racing. We'd also once again like to say a big thank you to our partners, the SimGrid, that's thesimgrid.com, you can Google search them, and Coach Dave Academy, without whom these two it would not be possible. That's coachdaveacademy.com. But then we're going to be looking forward to the racing in a week's time when we head to Germany for the Nürburgring. We move a little bit across continental Europe, and we will be expecting some fast and ferocious action at the circuit, and you won't want to miss it. But until then, ladies and gentlemen, remember to stay safe, stay smiling, stay well, and most importantly, like our drivers, remember to stay on track. Good night.